Okay, budget education session, just a couple of things, just wanna know, budget oversight and approval, that is our role to ensure we are providing quality, efficient, and fiscally responsible services to Chattanoogan. So this is our opportunity to ask questions and gather information to make an informed decision about the budget. So just a couple of notes. Of course, always feel free to ask any questions that you have. However, if something requires additional research, we'll pull that, and I have my little handy dandy notepad, and we'll pull that and provide that information to you. And then thank you to the administration for doing this for us, for putting this together. And also, we will take a break around 11:30, 12, depending on where we are in the session, because we know this can get a little mundane sometimes. Also, if at all possible, we'll hold questions, not to the end of budget, but at the end of each section. So for instance, just write down your question so you have essential calls he'll cover, city council, city judge. So at the end of each section, good morning, Councilman Clark, thank you. At the end of each section, we'll open up for questions. That way we can kind of get a good flow of it, so we're not kind of stopping midway through each line item. So just make sure you jot down your questions. And with that, I will turn it over to our new chief of staff, Kevin.
Well, thank you, Chairwoman Dotley. Thank you, Council. We're looking forward to a good conversation today. Thank you to the budget team for all the work to pull all of this together for us. A couple of orientation items. Each of you has a packet in front of you with a little binder clip. I just want to run through the documents that are provided there that are maybe useful in the course of the conversation, but more so I think will be useful for you just to keep as a reference. So first is the agenda. This is how we have today's conversation broken out into the different sections. So we're going to start with financials, go into general government, then we'll do operations department by department, then we'll go into other funds, capital budget, grants and opportunities, and then leave a little bit of time for general discussion. I think that we will beat some of these times, and I think that we will eclipse some of these times, but like I said in my email, I think it will all net out in the end. After that, you've got a list of, this is the City Council Quarterly Capital Project Report, so I think it's just important to recognize that while this budget does fund a number of capital projects, it is not all inclusive in terms of all of the capital projects that we have going on. So this document is helpful just to reorient you to what we have going on preceding this particular budget and on a go forward. And then following that, we've got the paving list for fiscal years 25 through 28. So wanted to provide some recent history on recently completed paving projects across the city, and then also give you line of sight into the things that we are tracking on a go forward. I will say that this list is it's subject to change just because we are constantly looking for maximizing opportunities. So if we have the ability to do something at a better cost, do something quicker, reprioritize based on whatever pressing needs might arise, we always want to maintain a level of flexibility with respect to paving, but I do think that that's going to be a useful reference for you guys. And then lastly, this is when we get into the RFP conversation, which is going to be the last item of section 2, the RFPs to agencies. As a reminder, these are the 4-year contracts. I wanted to provide just some additional background on the metrics that were put together prior to me being in this seat early on in the administration. And I know that we have had conversations with many of you about wanting to revisit metrics and the RFP process in general, which we fully intend to partner with you in this fiscal year to do just that as we're entering into the 4th year of those 4-year agreements, but wanted to provide that for you. And then lastly, we pulled together, just for your reference, the governing ordinances for all of the special revenue and enterprise funds, and then a little descriptor for each. So that way you can go back and reference the source material and read through the language of those ordinances for any particular fund that you might have an interest in.
It's a great document.
And other than that, before we jump in, I guess I just want to remind you, we, on the one hand, we are, the administration is enthusiastic about this budget because it does continue to fund the priorities that we've set forth through One Chattanooga and through our shared priorities over the course of the preceding 4 years with the previous council. And we're excited about that. We're excited about the progress that we're confident it will continue to build on. At the same time, it's a flat budget, effectively. As we mentioned in the proposal presentation last week, we're looking at approximately 3% organic growth in property tax collections. And so most of that is getting reinvested back into our employees, which we'll talk about. And then I want to mention again, just kind of the thing that the budget does not do that we feel is an urgent need for us to address is truing up our compensation for sworn fire and police. And so we do, again, just line of sight, we intend to come back with a separate proposal once we have all of the input data from the reappraisal process and what the new certified tax rate would be to try to address and fill that gap for our fire and police on the sworn side. We do give COLA and STEP increases on the civilian side in both of those agencies, but again, this is talking about just sworn. We don't address that in this budget at this juncture, but we do intend to in this fiscal year subsequently. So with that, we will jump in and start with the financials, and I'm gonna kick it over to Weston, our Deputy Chief Financial Officer.
Perfect. As we go through this, some of this we went over last week, so I'm gonna go through it quickly on that stuff, but if there's things you have questions on or you need me to slow down, just holler at me and I'll do that. So we'll start first with the general fund revenue summary. This is kind of a graphical representation of how the city's projected to be funded for FY 26, 56.8% being property taxes, 21 local sales tax, and then the other buckets. So the bulk of projected revenues coming from property taxes and local sales tax, as is historically the case with the city of Chattanooga. So the numbers behind the chart, you'll see FY 26 total projected revenue of $345 million. Kevin mentioned just a minute ago that's roughly a 3% or $8.7 million increase over last year's budget. Just a little more detail on some of these. So property taxes is mostly current property tax collection as we think of it. It also includes a little bit of pilot, some things of that nature. Local sales tax is just that, the local sales tax. Other local taxes, when you see that, what we're talking about there is liquor and beer tax, grocery receipts business tax, franchise taxes, things of that nature. State sales tax, again, is just that, the state sales tax money that we get from the state. And then other revenues is licensing permits, other intergovernmental revenues, fees, fines, forfeitures, miscellaneous revenues, interest, things like that. So that's kind of roughly what's in each of those buckets. But again, 3% growth, $8.7 million over last year's budget. So general fund expenditures, we'll get into it by department here in a minute, but this is kind of by function or by type. So you'll see salaries and benefits between sworn and civilian make up again over 50% of the pie. The bulk of this budget is dealing with those groups and paying our people. Services, when you see services, the 17%, what that's talking about is IT. It's in the budget book. It's 3 pages of different things, but the big ones are IT maintenance, hosting, licensing, street lights, 911 services, animal services, waste disposal, utilities, contracted agencies, things of that nature is what's in services. Debt service is just that. It's the funds set aside to pay the existing debt that we have, plus the projected debt for the new bond. Vehicle operations is gas, vehicle maintenance, things like that. The library card of the agencies there, and then others. Everything else that doesn't fit in one of those buckets. So we've touched on this, so you'll see here, again, the majority of this budget is dealing with our personnel. So FY 26, this budget that we have here has 1,996 positions in it, which is down from the 2,065 positions that were budgeted last year. But we'll touch on kind of that in more detail as we go through the different departments and how that flushes out as we go.
And I'll jump in and add here that, there are a couple ways, at least 2 ways that you could look at this. You could say, oh, well, we're getting rid of employees. But it isn't that. We are, as you guys know, through conversations with us and especially the returning members, know that this administration is really focused on how can we deliver the essential services that we provide and expand resources to our residents in the most efficient way possible. And so we're constantly looking for ways to do things better. And so we're proud of this number because we feel like this is this is representative of a calibrated staffing level, right? We've also talked about with you guys previously how we want our budgets to reflect reality. So we want what is on paper for each department to be reflected in what that department actually looks like with respect to positions and people. And for a long time, the city had gotten into a bad habit of having positions year over year that were never filled. And so that created this artificial inflation to some of our budgets at the department level. And so this is a reflection of our commitment to having cleaner budgets and staffing to the levels that are needed and not carrying excess fat.
So this budget, as Kevin mentioned, most of the $8.7 million increase is going back to our employees. With the non-sworn pay plan, employees will receive a 2% COLA and a 1% step, and the 1% step equates to another percent. So effectively, it's a 3% adjustment for civilian employees, so non-sworn, and then as well as goes into the increase in pension and OPEB that we had to pay. And then we have 5 new positions for CPD here.
All right.
So that wraps up financials.
Yeah, so any comments, any questions about our first section, financials? All right, don't look like it. All right, go ahead, Kevin.
All right.
Or Weston, or whichever one.
Yep, we're gonna continue on. So we're gonna jump now into general government. We're gonna cover, starting with essential costs. Weston will walk us through that. And then we will jump into the departments that are tucked under this general government section.
So essential costs, these are things that don't live in one of the departments. They're kind of overall citywide expenses. So you'll see debt service, appropriation for roughly $21.6 million, which includes an allowance for the projected bonds for the general fund this year. Liability insurance premium we have a fund, separate fund, to fund potential liability claims. We're budgeting $1,000 to go to that fund to help cover claims that may come through.
$1 million?
That's $1 million.
$1 million? Is that not what I said?
You said 1,000.
I'm sorry, $1 million. Sorry.
Got my
More coffee.
Yeah, I hadn't gotten to the coffee. Contingency fund appropriation of $4.8 million. R&R for departments. This is things replacing office furniture, things that are under the capital threshold, but that need to be replaced. Desk, chairs, things like that for the departments. So $2 million for that.
I'm gonna invite our Chief Operating Officer, Mandy Green, up real quick, because as we jump into kind of department, you are going to see, oh, you know what, I'm jumping the gun. But Mandy, will you join us? I'll tee this up and then I'll pass it back to you, Weston.
A few more essential costs.
Yep, but when we get to Mandy here in a second, I'll explain what she's gonna explain.
So in essential costs is some money going to United Way to support the senior tax freeze program to help pay for stormwater fees for seniors. It also includes the stormwater fees that the city pays on city-owned property. Election expenses that we have to pay. It includes the 50% of the mixed drink tax that we have to send to the county to fund education. And then it includes an allocation, sort of like the liability allocation, to the technology replacement fund, which is essentially a fund created to replace laptops as they run out. So that's it. Yeah.
Okay, so now we're gonna jump into some of the departments that are under general government. So you're gonna see. Yep.
So any questions about essential costs?
I have
Yes,
got a
okay,
couple.
just real quick, so Councilman Henderson, followed by Councilman Clark.
Thank you.
So go back, if you would, to the, right there, I guess. From last year, it looks like contingency and R&R is up a total of $3 million combined. Why in a year where we're gonna look at a property tax increase, are we increasing R&R and contingency? It looks like that would be a great place to at least stay flat instead of increase 3 million, maybe even cut. I didn't see travel expenses up here, which I don't, maybe that's not an essential cost, but it looks like travel expenses across the board are up as well. I mean, if we're in a tight budget season where we're talking about looking at a tax increase, I think we're gonna have to start looking at where we can legitimately cut some more expenses. I'm a little concerned the fact that we're gonna address fire and police after this budget and not during this budget, so and you don't have to give me an explanation now, but I would like to know why these two items in particular are up $3 million
Sure.
over last year.
Yep, thank you, Councilman
And
Henderson.
like I say, you don't have to do it now, but I guess you can just send that, and I'm assuming you just want an email sent to all council members, kind of explain or answering that question, as opposed to taking,
Right, so if it's a question that needs a little bit more research for those who came in a little late, if it's a question like, Councilman Henderson has, that leaves a little bit more research on it, then we'll take it, and I'll reconfirm all this before we end. We'll take it and get the information out to you all with the actual question and the response, if we're not able to have all of it, answered right at the moment. So your question is, why are we increasing R&R and contingency in a tight budget year?
in a tight budget year when, it's up $3 million. That,
Yes, sir.
the best I can tell from.
Yep,
Good
so
homework here.
we will follow up. So we want to say a couple of things. One, our colleague Kimberly Strong is taking notes for us. She's going to capture all of your questions, and we will do exactly what you suggested.
Right.
We will provide those answers and disseminate them. But I do want to respond with just a couple of thoughts right off the bat here. One, you're right. This is relative to the need that we have with respect to fire and police. We don't have the recurring revenue to do what we need to do. So this is just an estimate with respect to the cost of closing the gap with compensation for sworn. But we're looking in the neighborhood between $16 and $20 million. And so we do not have the ability to identify savings at that level on a recurring basis to be able to fund that need in this budget, which is at least part of the reason why we feel it does warrant a separate proposal where we can go and try to capture some additional revenue that might be available to us. But secondly, on the contingency piece, and Weston, you jump in here in a second, but we are sensitive to the conversation that we had with the previous council as part of last year's budget amendment around contingency funding, around reserves, around fiscal stewardship. And while we are up this year over year, when you look at best practices from similarly sized municipalities, we're still a little bit under what would be considered a right on the money kind of contingency funding. So we feel like we're trying to move us in the right direction towards getting into a pattern where we're consistently funding contingency at levels that are consistent with other municipalities of similar size. Do you want to say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I can. So, and two, some of the contingency, we had some rates. I think we discussed with you guys some of the rates for OPEB and pension and some of those things had not been finalized, and they were finalized late last week. And so, instead of trying to redo the entire budget, they're in contingency. But also with those changes, kind of piggybacking on what you said, some of the change that's in here, a chunk of it is related to kind of OPEB and pension things that fluctuate from year to year. So we may have a swing in the other direction next year where we can't continue to fund pay raises through, it's not a recurring revenue source, if that makes sense, where it's based on the actuarial studies and all the different things that we get. And so we can definitely, and then best range we looked at is like 3 to 5% is kind of the guidance that we were able to find in contingency. This puts us closer to 2%, so closer to where we were. And then the R&R, in the past we've decreased that as a way to balance the budget. The ask this year was right around a little over $2 million from the departments. So this was our attempt to try to get that closer to what the departments were requesting.
So historically, have we not run about a 1% contingency of our budget in Chattanooga over the last?
My understanding is that historically we have run closer to a 1%, but the kind of gold standard is closer to 5%. Is that accurate?
Yeah, 3 to 5.
3 to 5%.
Well, my only point is, and I'm not trying to be argumentative, but if we've survived on.
Sure.
1%,
You're right. You're right. Yes, sir. Noted.
thank you.
Right, so Chairman Henderson, you good for now, and we'll provide additional information as well?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, Councilman Clark.
That was actually, as the newbie, that was
that was my question, is to get a better understanding of what our rate of inflation is for contingency. I know Weston mentioned that a lot of that fluctuation and that calculation comes by way of pensions. Can you give me some other examples that we use contingency fund appropriations for? And can someone please tell me what R&R is?
Repair and replacement.
Thank you. I am not an acronym
Sorry.
person
Yeah,
for the
there may be
newbies.
some acronyms in here, so feel
Yeah.
free to ask.
And if I could, just real quick, on R&R, Councilman Clark and Councilman Henderson and others. So in the past, to Weston's point, we've been funding R&R at about half this level. And then as things come up over the course of the year, we've been able to pull out of contingency to fund kind of pressing needs that really could be categorized as R&R. And so, again, zooming out to what we're trying to accomplish with our budgeting moving forward is we want budgets that reflect reality, and we want monies set aside for the things that they're actually gonna be used for versus having a pot of money over here, and as we are conducting the business of the city throughout a fiscal year, going to use that money when we could have just budgeted, right-sized its actual cost center, right, and then used it for its intended purpose, if that makes sense. And we want to, so we feel like we're trying to move in that direction with these two items.
Yeah, Councilwoman, it's when his answer is, answered, I'll probably,
Okay.
that should suffice for me. I just wanted to know a little bit more about what contingency funds we use for and how we calculate it, because I know what contingency is, but when explaining this to our constituency, if there's been an increase that's higher than what we've normally have done, what goes into that reality, I know we budget for reality, but some of us budget for priorities.
Sure.
Which is a reality. So I'd like to get a little bit more historical understanding from his question. What typically have we funded as contingencies, and what would cause for this to be a percent increase from?
Yeah.
And what was the calculation and reasoning for that?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, so you just want to know what is the rate of inflation and how do we calculate that from a more historical
Yes.
perspective, more data driven?
Yes, ma'am.
That one, and then what are some other areas that we use contingencies for?
That's right. And I think our questions are the same. I'm sure if you answer his question, I'll get that, yeah.
Okay, we'll
So we
make
can just
sure.
put that in one.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll make sure I capture.
Thank you, Kim.
Okay, I got you. Any other questions about essential costs? And I know we're not finished. All right. With essential costs?
We're not finished, we are with A.
Council-
Hey, okay, okay.
Councilman, I do have another question. When it comes to travel, is it under essential costs, or when will I see it discussed?
It's in the departments.
Okay, so it's not, it's
not a
it's
Broke
centralized
out
fund.
it's broke out,
Each
okay,
department
okay.
budget.
I just brought that up as kind of
Gotcha, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so each budget department, each department budgets for travel within there.
Gotcha.
All right, council, any other questions about essential costs? All right, thank you so much.
So we're gonna jump into city council and then the following departments that fall under general government. Mandy, could you explain, there's gonna be you're gonna see a consistent theme here at the top with respect to the marginal increase in some of these departments, and a lot of it is going to be driven by personnel, but another portion of it is going to be driven by the way that we have restructured our risk function across the city. And so at the top here, I want Mandy to explain that so that we can be on the same page.
Yeah, so I know you all had a presentation by risk as they came in here. When I came into the city in 2021, we didn't have a designated risk department or function. And so we created that department. It has lived under human resources until this year. We are now branching it off as its own department. And so what we're doing is we're creating an internal enterprise fund. So every department pays per amount of employees and contributes into the risk fund. So it's funded out of the general fund for the risk department. And so that's best practice. If you look across the nation, that is what people are doing in order to have it's called an risk enterprise fund. I don't want to confuse you all. It's not our enterprise fund. It is just an internal fund, but that's what's referred to in many organizations. And so what you'll see is that individual cost. We did the same thing when it came to the Well Advantage Center. When I came here, we didn't have any way to fund repairs for the Well Advantage Center, so we ended up doing a per employee charge to pay for, and the employees didn't pay that. We paid for internally, but per employee, they paid to contribute to the roof and HVAC and things for the Well Advantage Center.
So as we go through that, some of the increase in each department for the most part is related to risk. So we'll start with city council. So city council to total proposed change increase of $44,000 up to $996,000. That includes 12 authorized positions, personnel at $725,000, and operations at $271,000. There's not a whole lot in the increase. The increase it's relatively flat, but the increase was for some capital, so security equipment or whatever. There's $27,000 for that, and then again the risk management charge $15,000 based on the head count.
So where do we see that risk line item? Oh, I'm sorry, this is not the time, I apologize.
Oh, it is. Are y'all finished with city council?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we
Oh, it's
Go
okay,
ahead.
I don't have to
Yeah.
wait till the end of general
No,
government.
that's
No,
fine.
no, no, we're doing each section.
Okay, got
Yeah,
it.
That way
that's
we're kind of
fine.
like. you
Let
know.
me.
Yeah, so is the,
There is a line item for it. Let me find it. Actually, let me get my book. Find it faster.
Madam Chair,
yes, ma'am.
do we have funds in for like contractual services? We usually have like $100.
Yeah, there is money that we haven't spent thus far.
Are we gonna humble it next year?
I'm right here on it. Literally,
City council.
I just realized there's people in the chambers.
So on page B54, it's
in the-
under city council.
Page B54, if you wanna look at it.
B54, what section?
Down at the very bottom.
Risk
under-
management allocated costs?
That's right.
Okay.
So there'll be that line item in every.
On every budget, that's where we can start seeing that
That's
show up. Okay, great, thank you,
Is
that'll be.
this the microphone that's in there? This thing right here?
It's picking up the audio for the whole
Okay,
conversation.
so I'm gonna push it kind of closer.
Well, you got
Well,
one-
no, because it's not picking up y'all's, oh, there's one
got
down
one
there.
down
We got one down here too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just realized that there
Yeah.
are people in chambers who, which I didn't know,
It's all right.
that are
And this is
listening.
all streaming.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
fine. All right.
Okay,
So-
thank you, that's helpful.
Okay, Madam Chair, any other questions? Any other questions about, city council budget? It's perfect, as we are.
I did have another question. We have $700 in our budget for newspapers, and I am unaware of what newspaper subscriptions we have, and I read the newspaper every day.
Times Free Press.
Yeah, I think it's just Times Free Press.
We get a hard copy back there.
We spend $700 a year on, okay.
For the, online subscription, and then I guess the paper subscription as well. It's expensive, paper's expensive now.
I know, but I get that at home, and I don't spend $700 a month on it. Okay,
Look
maybe
up-
maybe it's some kind of group.
Any advertising.
Oh, the advertising, that's true too. We gotta advertise for
We
every,
have to advertise,
every meeting,
Public notice.
public notice.
any kind of public notice.
There's a separate line item for advertising, so.
Yeah, I don't think that would be that.
But maybe you have a license, a subscription for the online for everybody.
Okay, so we'll
That may be what
ask,
it is.
Yeah, we should find
what
out
is
about that.
the $700 for, what is it, newspaper?
Newspapers.
All right, we'll get that information to you, Madam Chair. Any other questions or anything about city council?
those 12 authorized positions, are those current or all field?
I'm
That's
on-
us. We're nine.
Oh, we're just, oh, okay. I was like, I'm so confused.
Come on, man.
We thought we had all kind of.
I was like, wait, I get an assistant? Right.
Literally the 12 people you see, that's it.
I was like, where are those positions? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Sitting in one of them.
Yes, any other
Thank you.
questions? All right, I think we're good to go to the next, city judge. Oh my God.
All right, perfect. So city judge proposed budget of $638,000. This is an increase of roughly $35,000. Again, mostly flat. Personnel is 609. The judge's salary is set at the state level, and then they have their few COLA increases with the folks they have over there, and then they have a risk management charge of $10,000 for them.
Any questions about city judge? All right.
All right, city attorney, proposed budget, $2.4 million, an increase of almost $300,000. Includes 18 authorized positions, including 2 new ones, a paralegal and a legal office manager. you can see personnel 2.2 million and then operations of $200,000. In operations, we had a $40,000 increase roughly for warehouse storage and delivery. That's Iron Mountain document storage. And then they had a risk management fee of $22,000 to increase their operations budget as well.
A quick note on the two positions. So this is part of the consultant engagement that we did earlier this year where we asked them to jump into different departments and help us identify some efficiencies. As we all know, our city attorney stays covered up. And so we want to give some additional help from an office management perspective, just talking at and looking at the flow of the office operations, and then some additional paralegal horsepower to actually help process some of the caseloads there, the workloads.
No more auditors.
Thank you, Phoebe. Any questions about our city attorney's office? Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Two questions. Looking at page B73, which is the executive summary, mentions that the tort reform bill is a real concern, and I wondered what the status of that bill is.
At this point in time, it looks like it's been shot down for the year, which
Okay.
is the concern that we would have more than double the amounts of the tort liability.
Yeah,
act.
so it did not pass in
Did
this
not pass so
session.
far.
Okay.
Other things have passed, but not that.
Okay. The other question I had was a systemic concern that you all have around the risk software. And you said you're concerned about access to risk management and claim software on settlements that are required to be approved by the city attorney without access to the origami software in this office. Can you speak to that, please?
They have provided me with access to origami, but none of the other folks in the office right now. So I can actually review that before I approve a claim, which is very helpful in that regard. I'm not sure what the cost of origami software would be for more than just one user. But the risk management folks apparently are going to be coming over to our office at least one day a week here during this next year. We've actually provided a space for them to actually be there. So hopefully a person can help me if I have questions about claims, learn about that. But the origami software was sort of a vacuum for a while, and that was one of the big things that was involved in the Ernst Young report.
Okay, and so risk management will make assessments and recommendations on
Yes.
settlements, and then
Has to
you
be approved by
have to be approved by you.
Yes.
And so that'll be a one day a week where you'll go over those things
Yes.
together? Okay,
And
and
hopefully
then kind
keep
of,
your numbers down on what we're paying out. in
right,
claims.
okay, and then reassess next year as to how well that worked.
Yes.
Okay,
And if we can get more people involved later on, we'll try to do that.
okay,
Yes,
thank you.
thank you.
All right. Any other questions, Madam Chair?
No, ma'am.
All right, that's it. All right.
So moving on to internal audit, they have a proposed budget of $911,000, including, which is an increase of roughly $44,000. They have 6 authorized positions, I'm sorry. Their personnel is $800,000, operations is another $100,000. Their budget was pretty flat. The only changes were, personnel, they went up, $36,000. Yep. Stan's salary is set by the audit committee, and the other folks in his office got the COLA, as we mentioned earlier. They also had a $7,500 risk management increase.
Any questions about internal audit, Madam Chair?
I felt like the audit committee's decision to increase our auditor's salary by $18,058 was quite a bit, and then to match that with the benefits, so we've got a $36,000 increase for a single employee. Have we seen that, other than we've got a judge that's by the state? Are we seeing $36,000 in salary increases in other roles? I haven't noticed that elsewhere in the budget.
We are not, that salary, we do not control that salary.
I know we don't.
Okay, so.
How
let
did
me-
the
let me
audit
take a
committee
fresh look.
determine, as Stan walked in, how did the audit committee determine that it was, that this was the year?
In there, that is not correct.
Okay,
That is the total amount of increase for my entire staff. That 18,000. I pointed that out to budget the other day.
Okay.
That's the correct
So that's representative of the,
That's the entire
The
increase.
COLA and the step.
COLA and the step increase, yes. I didn't get an $18,000 salary.
okay, I was gonna say, you got a great committee, man. I want that committee.
Our budget's pretty much flat, other than the salary increase.
Yeah, cause you said it only went up $82 and
Everything else in there is like the benefits we don't control,
Right.
whatever increase was there, and that risk management allocation.
Uh-huh.
Other than that, we're just flat.
okay, well, you walked in at just the right time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I was in the chamber.
All right, yeah, I was.
And when I heard that, I thought, well, they haven't announced that number.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, thank you, thank you.
That's all, Madam Chair.
So we'll make that correction.
Okay. Any other questions about internal audit? All right, thank you, Stan.
Came to
All
the
right.
rescue.
Yes. All right, moving on. And
All right,
and all these-
DTS.
Yeah, and all these people will be here. And all these
You
people.
wanna jump in and I'm?
Yeah. Yeah.
All these people.
No, we're just.
Oh, you go ahead.
Okay, alright, perfect. Alright, DTS, so proposed budget of $17.3 million, which is an increase of $1.3 million over the prior year. It includes 83 authorized positions, which is a net increase of 25 positions. Position changes, you can see a few of them there. They also have a risk management fee that went over to them, roughly $102,000 that they're paying now in risk. And then they have a couple capital things, software and equipment under $10,000, $15,000, which is another $100,000.
So we talked about this reorganization last week in our presentation to council. So this is a strategic reorg. It's designed to better position our Department of Technology Services to provide the level of service and to service the technology needs that have changed over time. And so, yeah, we are hopeful that we can continue to make progress against the digital transformation roadmap that the department has laid out. And we're happy to take some questions here and anticipate that you might have some.
All right, any questions? All right, Councilwoman Knoll.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. The 83 authorized position and the net increase, is that 25 already in that 83, or is that 83 plus the 25?
The 25 is in the 83.
It's in there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
And that's it, Madam?
That's it?
All right, Madam Vice Chair. Any other questions? Council, yes, Councilman Henderson.
So of all the departments, completely inept when it comes to technology services. But I have had some people reach out to me about some concerns in the transition of this reorg. Basically, we obviously let some people know that their job would no longer be available. In the transition between letting those people go and hiring new staff, what happens during that interim as far as making sure that we're safe from hacks, that we're making sure police departments run efficiently, that the fire department runs efficiently, because there look like there's gonna be some months of overlap there where we may not have anybody in that position.
Yes, sir.
What does that look like?
Yep, thank you for the question. So I'm going to invite our administrator, Gerald Neal, to come up, and while he is, I'll say that continuity of service is a priority for the administration. We do not believe that there's going to be any disruption in our ability to carry out the essential services that we provide, including cybersecurity. I would remind you that, so before the net increase of 25, we're still talking about an organization of roughly 60 people that underpin the organization that do the work day in and day out. So those folks are still there, going to still be working and making sure that all of our ducks are in a row. The affected employees on the RIF side, there are 7 of them, plus 2 contracted employees. So, Gerald, would you like to add to that?
Sure. Morning, Council.
Morning.
Gerald Neal, CIO for the city. So to respond to your question, absolutely, continuity of service has been part of the plan all along. I have third parties that I have engaged in specifically for security. I have a qualified third party who's gonna come in and provide help, guidance, work while we do this. We still have a very capable and hardworking staff. 2 members of the cybersecurity team are still here. They've been here for a couple of years, so they're well-versed in our issues. But I do want to pay particular attention of that, so that's going to get my personal attention along with this third party. With respect to our police department,
How did we arrive at the third party? Is this a short-term contract, or what is this?
I have set up a yearly contract with them that I can end whenever we don't need their services. So I have them extended out over time to make sure I have plenty of runway to make the transition. So does that answer your question, sir?
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a blanket contract with this third party?
It is a contract, yes, with third party through Carasoft, one of our providers. So that's how we have secured them. The name of the firm is Fortress SRM. They're part of Fulcrum IT Partners. So I find them a highly qualified person. The gentleman, one of the key people I'm working with, has 40 years of experience in federal government, state government, local government, and private industry. That's how I came to pick these people. I've talked with them for a while, and I feel like they will be excellent advisors and hands-on for the work that we need to do if it's above and beyond the 2 dedicated people that I have currently still on the team.
Any other, yes, Madam Vice Chair.
Okay, so is this the first time you're using this group?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay.
It is, yes,
Thank you. Thank
Yes.
you, Madam Chair.
yes.
All right.
But certainly not the first time they've been through a situation like this. They are well-versed in many, many different situations like this, some much more difficult than our situation. Our situation is difficult relative to a transition. And I've been through lots of difficult transitions in my life, and I'm very committed to seeing this one through. I was in my prior role on the team that, the leadership team that helped merge the Dell and EMC together, a $67 billion technology merger. My team, I had to deal with this kind of transition, very abrupt, year after year of changes. So I have learned to deal with complicated situations, difficult situations, to plan the best I can, and then learn to react in a situation where a plan doesn't come to fruition or doesn't go just the way you thought it might go. And that may be required here, but I am bringing all of those skills to this situation. And expect to be able to see us through. I think this is absolutely the right thing to do for the city and for this department. And I regret that some of our people will not be with us beyond the period of the end of this fiscal. But I believe the change that we're making across the department, not just in the areas we're talking about now, but more broadly, positions my department, this department, gives it the kind of investment it needs and has needed for many years, so that we will be well able to take care of not only today, but 3 years from now and 5 years from now. So my plan and what I envision here is to set the city up for years to come with divisions and skills, et cetera, that will really let us deliver in the way we need to.
Thank you, Gerald.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and then, Madam Chair, and then you had another question?
No, I'm good,
Okay,
thank you,
okay.
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Gerald, between the contractor that you mentioned and what you've shared about your background, having gone through this, talk to us about the known unknowns that you expect that we will encounter. What are the risks that you have on the horizon during this 3 to 6 months transition from losing some of these key staff people, working with a third party, and then trying to get folks hired?
So I think
What's gonna go wrong
Oh.
that we're gonna have to fix? That you know is gonna go wrong, because it does.
well, things that go wrong today, which most likely will continue to be a challenge for us, say is in our public safety cameras. They have been up and down and up and down and up and down now for a number of months. And my team has been, working their backsides off along with Chief Chambers' team to try to solve that problem. We have a very complex system. So I don't expect that through this transition, we won't have to deal with that problem. Part of my plan is to put a dedicated 5-person team to running the city's camera network, Today, it's a piecemeal. And again, I have a very dedicated staff, they're capable and they're hardworking, but they start on the problem, and then they have to task switch to something else, and then they have to come back, and then they have to go to somewhere else. And so what I'm gonna put into place is a dedicated 5-person team with a manager and some other key engineers and camera technicians and specialists, so they can pay attention to the problem dedicated, full-time, and work on it. So I would expect a known, surprise or a happening is gonna be in the camera network. It may go down. I do plan to, as I talked about in security, to have a third party to help with that area as well, okay? And just when we're talking about it too, so I think we have projects going on, and one of the things that happens in transitions is that sometimes projects can fall through the cracks. So I'm asking all the affected people to work with me, to give me as full a handover as they can, tell me the really important things, and then try to give me a complete read of the rest of what's on their plate, so I can see that. And then I can work with their people, and I can work with the third parties to do everything possible to make sure something doesn't fall between the cracks or not get noticed, and then have to be recovered. So those are some of the sort of known unknowns, or places where I think we might have some challenges. But am I answering your question, ma'am?
Yeah, we're definitely headed in the right direction in terms of detail. So going back then to cybersecurity and recognizing within the executive statement that you put together, that cybersecurity is critical and we are every day more at risk. So you're planning a 5-person team with a manager and engineers to manage the camera network, but you've said you've got 2 people and a third party for cybersecurity. Help me understand how that's balanced compared to managing cameras, that we'll have 2 people managing our cybersecurity.
Yeah, so the third party will step in to fill the place of the person who won't be with us after June 30 in terms of work being done. And between me and this gentleman I talked about that has 40 years of experience, who's advising me, we will look strategically at what needs to be done, what has been done. Part of the plan is to come in and do a full assessment of everything that is there today. So I've asked that third party to do that, Fortress SRM, so I can take a look at, are we where we need to be? And I think we're in a good posture. The team's done a good job to date. But I want to get a full grounding, so I know the floor I'm standing on, and then we'll go after anything that we need to go after. And if I need additional resource beyond the 2 people plus the advising I'm getting, then I have the ability to contract them in until I can, have the full-time staff that I want to have.
So we're going into a reorg without an understanding of what we need for cybersecurity? Like you haven't done you haven't had the consultant come in and tell you what you need for cybersecurity yet?
I've been comfortable with where we are to date.
Okay.
So we're making a change, and this is the opportunity to assess that environment and see where else we need to go, right? Do I have any gaps that the team just hasn't been able to get to? And if so, I'll fill them. And then more strategically, I'm looking for a 1, 3, 5-year plan that will come out of the work with this third party, so that we have a way to evolve our cybersecurity posture for the city.
Okay.
Will you permit, I'm gonna get a bottle of water here, get a little dry mouth.
The other question that I had, the vision statement, I must say, the IT technology services vision statement is definitely the biggest vision of all of the executive summaries that I read, because life is going to be perfect after 2026 based on this, and I'm really excited for the world to be perfect. That we will be a model of innovation and efficiency, double down on our commitment to cybersecurity, aging infrastructure, consistently evaluated, replace, modernize. I mean, it's a wonderful vision. A vision that I've been hearing about for 4 years that on the face of it seems like it should have been easy to do and clearly was not, is these frigging traffic signals. And getting our traffic signals smart and timed. And I will say again, until it doesn't happen, that I often get to take a street-by-street tour of Market Street and have an opportunity to pause and enjoy the intersection. And then I get to see the next one and the next one. And we have many people who feel like they have the opportunity to do that on Fraser Avenue, really get a chance to check out what's growing in the new planters. I mean, unfortunately, we don't always want to take a tour because we've taken a tour before, right?
Yes.
When is the magic going to happen, Gerald, for all the smart signals?
So the,
How fast is this gonna happen in 2026? FY 2026?
That's why twenty
Let me
twenty-six.
stop, let me do this real quick, cause there's a lot of questions. So traffic signals up, so I'm gonna do a.
Oh, yeah, maybe a follow-up.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
I
yeah,
apologize.
follow-up. So traffic signals update, and then how is, what we're doing currently balanced with third party, and I'm sure Kim is taking great notes. And then, the DTS known unknowns, and then you mentioned public safety cameras. And then, information again about the third party DTS transition. So those are things that we're gonna capture to make sure that they goes to everybody. Because those are some very important questions, cause I got the email too from one of the, I guess maybe somebody that's leaving, talking about some transitional issues. So we wanna make sure those are answered and make sure if anybody else has any questions, and we wanna sit too long on it.
Got it.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Madam
Thank you for keeping
Chair.
us on
Yeah, did you
track.
have any other questions though?
Those were my big buckets.
Okay, I got you.
Councilwoman,
And then,
I do
yes.
have a clarity question.
Yes, of
That
course.
probably was answered when I was re-upping.
Yeah, your stuff.
I'm sorry about that. Gerald, and just for the record, I am in favor of the restructuring, and I do understand the shift and for the increased technology needs to support that camera system. I did a tour
Yes.
with EPB, who I know we work with to put those cameras up and replacing those cameras. So I completely support that. I guess my question would be, just for clarity purposes, the new positions to cover the increased technology needs, how is that connected to our third party? I know that some of the positions, because we, like Councilwoman Dotley has said, that we got educated, which I enjoy. A lot of skill set, a lot of directors left those positions, a lot of institutionalized skill sets. Are they, this third party, are they filling in some of those leadership roles in that skill set? Are they some of those new positions, just for educational purposes?
They're just filling in the transition so that we can
Okay.
make as smooth a transition as possible. I'd be a silly gentleman to stand up here and tell you that it won't have its bumps. Every
Sure.
big change has its bumps, but we will continue to deliver, right? So that we have as smooth a transition as possible. That's what the third parties are for, okay?
So they're not actually going to, we're not hiring like a
I'm not
staffing
hiring-
agency
I'm not
or
hiring
third
an
party.
outside services
Okay.
firm or something like that, or a managed services firm to come in and do this. No, these are to enable the transition to happen as
Just for
smoothly as
transition,
possible.
okay.
Absolutely, that's
And what is
they're
that
for.
do you have an estimate of what that transition period looks like the time frame? I know that some of these positions are ending at the end of the fiscal,
Yes.
which.
Well, we'll be in the transition for quite a while. There's a large number of people to hire. And so I would think it's gonna take us, a good chunk of next year
Okay.
to make that transition.
Thank you.
My intention is to be through with it next year fully, to have all the open positions staffed, people ramped up, and the third parties then can stand down.
Gotcha.
Right.
Gotcha, thank you.
That's my intention.
Councilman, thank you. This is obviously a topic of great interest, and we want to make sure that we're providing you guys all the information on both the operational and the implementation side. So we're going to follow up with comprehensive documentation on how this is going to play out and what the plan is on a go forward, including those verticals of specific concerns so that we address all.
And that answer was great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, council? As Kevin stated, and our chief of staff stated, they will do a comprehensive summary of everything that's moving forward. But did you have any other pertinent questions you wanted to add to it? All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Jared. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Council.
So we'll move on to purchasing, proposed budget of $1.3 million, which is an increase of $120,000. 12 authorized positions, no net change. We did bring in one position that was a supplier coordinator position, and then we transferred from another department, and then removed a position that was authorized but not funded in the prior year. Overall, it's a fairly flat budget. The two biggest things is advertising increased about $10,000 for really going after suppliers and trying to get into that and do more work there, which is why the coordinator was brought into purchasing as well. And then a risk management charge of $15,000.
Yeah, let me just say one more thing about kind of diversifying along the lines of suppliers. We continue to prioritize that. We want to make sure that anybody who exists in the city of Chattanooga and has a company or business operation that could be applicable and available to providing their products or services to the city, we wanna make sure that they're aware that those opportunities exist. And so we're continuing to build out our outreach, and trying to be proactive in terms of getting people plugged into our purchasing pipeline. And that's an area of focus for that.
And
supplier
some of that
management
came out of the EY work as well, is really bulking up our supplier portal, and we're getting that all solidified, and then getting people into it and complying with it, and really getting out in the community with our supplier groups.
If I could, is that position currently filled?
It is not currently
Okay.
filled. It was filled, and I believe the gentleman left
Yeah,
a
that
month
was
ago,
Donnie
Donnie Walker.
Donnie Walker, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay,
So-
remember.
It is not currently.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Madam Chair, I'm so sorry.
So, the increase of $10,000 for advertising was interesting based on the trend that they've identified within this department, that the process and the way of doing business is very difficult. So we're gonna spend more money on advertising. Can we get some information on what they're doing to improve the systems? Because, it said there's difficulty in our solicitation process. Many have expressed concern over our delayed payment issues. I mean, those are things we just need to fix. And I know we've been working on for a long time.
Yeah, so we had a consultant come in and they went through our process and made some suggestions, and Debbie went through and completely changed all the cost centers, made it as simple as possible for people to enter. The feedback that we have received from the consultant that contacted our vendors was that they were paid timely when they used the actual portal to do it, and that they found the portal to be easy to use. So we have completely changed the portal. So I would encourage, if someone that has used it in the past and can use it today, if there's additional feedback, we're happy to hear it. But what we've heard in the last few months is that it's very easy to use, and that the change of the cost centers of how you choose what it is that you provide is fantastic. So we have done that, as well as now we're going to hit the advertising, and we've hit social media. We've done a bunch of different plays to try to get some additional people for free advertising, but we're also have to hit the paid advertising.
Okay, so what you're saying doesn't match up with what this document says, just so you know.
Okay.
This, I mean, I guess this is
Yeah, I think the summer,
old,
There,
and what you're discussing is new. I don't know how many months ago this was written,
I think
but,
the summary could be, the language could be tweaked a little bit to demonstrate that the advertising piece is kind of a phase 2 of implementing some of the changes that were recommended around process.
well, this doesn't imply that anything was done. It just, we are seeing a reluctance by vendors to bid with the city, et cetera. So,
We will update that.
well,
So what I believe most of these are
115,
written
B115.
January/early February, so
Right.
we're now in May, and so we've made some of those changes in between.
we have, and since, probably since this was written, we've hired a project manager that's really helping us implement the EY recommendations from
Okay.
payroll to city court, but purchasing is another big one. So he's working with the team. Also Daniel Harrigan, who was the interim, CHRO, thank you, is now in purchasing and helping a lot with processes. That's kind of his wheelhouse.
great.
So he's in there really trying to help on that side of the house for them. And yeah, and then we had some changes we had to make within Oracle to the supplier portal, because there were some issues there, but those have been made in the last month or so. So
Okay.
things seem to be running better. So this was in January. Since then, we are closer in the right direction.
But we will make an update to
Yes.
that, because it's important that the narrative matches what we're actually doing.
I mean,
So thank you
that's
for flagging
what
that.
we have to study, so.
So y'all will do y'all send, and when y'all, I guess with the whole summary of questions, y'all will send that update as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Right, okay. Any other questions about purchasing? Yes, Councilman Elliott.
Just not a question, but more of like a follow-up in the future. I know once we get this supplier diversity position filled, and once they get settled, I would love to see what strategies they have.
Sure.
I think it's gonna be interesting with this going under purchasing. Is it still gonna be the same level of commitment to outreach, and how do we start pulling in those underrepresented folks to engage in our business process? So nothing, not a
Sure.
question or anything now, just something to flag,
No,
talk about in the future.
And two, Donnie was really using the purchasing staff, and this is just kind of realigning. It just didn't make sense to have him outside of purchasing when he was using the purchasing staff, and they were basically running through purchasing. It was just outside, so this just makes it a little easier to manage. But yes, we will definitely follow up.
And as And that's follow-up to that, Councilman Elliott. I know we have, equity and community engagement coming in with Tony. They do have a dashboard that we can all see, how they're measuring purchasing,
Okay.
diversity dashboard, and kind of how they're capturing that too. That's something new that I saw earlier this year. So that's something that we can see. So hopefully maybe he can speak to that too when he comes and does his presentation too.
And Councilman Elliott, oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
We will follow up, but I will say that just to augment what Weston was saying, the move into purchasing was to enhance our effectiveness with outreach. So,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And that's my question, is the follow-up, when we talk about the effectiveness of outreach and how we're spending those advertising dollars, and just for clarity purposes, is that position being utilized to specifically go after, you know, diverse suppliers? Like, is that, can you speak specifically to if that's helping us diversify and bring more minorities into the supplier chain for the city?
So it is in this way. We want to think about it like this. If there's a pie of potential suppliers out there, we're only taking advantage of a really small sliver. And so we want to expand the knowledge base for folks who are currently not participating in the city purchasing process. And we want to target communities where we know that there are small businesses and companies. And absolutely, those are diverse communities. There are also communities maybe out in East Brainerd, right, who those on the other side of the ridge, they're not necessarily participating. There's absolutely a desire to get folks who historically have not been engaged in the process, and that's reflected in the strategy.
Do we have is this position specific to that, or?
It is.
Okay. And what's the title for the position?
Supplier diversity manager.
It's the
Supplier Diversity Manager, okay. And just for, you know, when we are using words that typically we get dinged for, you know, in our political climate, and maybe this is Councilwoman Dotley, maybe you could chime in on this, because I love it. I think we need to do it. But what are the adverse effects that the backlash, or by using such a loaded term, you know, even though we know what it's used for, and we need the supply diversity and inviting women, minorities, people to do business with the city, are we setting ourselves up for any type of adverse response or issues and calling it supply diversity, or can we just do it in our work?
That's a great
What are your
question.
thoughts on
Yeah,
that? Just
thank you,
curiosity.
Councilman
I'm
Clark.
sorry. Me and Ronald are doing this, and I'm trying to.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm like, you go that way, I go this way.
I
Okay.
stand up, but I'm not very tall. I'll figure it out.
No, you're fine.
So
When I did this, you-
fundamentally, what the Kelly administration is about is expanding access to opportunities. Okay, and so I think that in light of the political environment that we're currently in, we do need to go through and check the language to make sure that the language that we're using to describe our intent is consistent with what state statute will soon require.
That's right. There you go. Thank you.
And will be consistent with what we know needs to be done from expanding the access, increasing awareness across the city, and getting more people involved with both this, but then across, you know, the full gamut of city
Yeah.
services, making sure that people have access to the resources, have access to the information, and that we are treating everybody the same.
But you hit it on the nail when you said that in this political climate, as state statute, because what I don't want is for people to get caught up in that, and then it impacts business for people who are trying to do business for us, you know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
And so you answered it spot on in making sure that we're thinking about that, but we're also creating it and still doing the work without creating some adverse effect because of a state law that, you know, I'm not in particular in support of, but it still fosters an environment in our budget that allows minorities to still feel comfortable and accessible to do business with us. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions about purchasing? All right, thank you so much. On to agencies.
So quick
this is the fun
overview
one.
of where you can find the corresponding materials in the online or printed budget. We're gonna be looking at P 129, B133, B131.
So here are the proposed agencies here, $11.7 million, increase of $3.6 million. We've touched on most of these, I think, already, but we'll run through them real quick. So the first two, the Tennessee River Park and Enterprise South, those are partnerships with the county that we're committed to there. The next five, the Design Studios, C&E, Community Haven, and Habitat for Humanity partnership are all listed there for you. And then the last one, the big one there at the bottom, CARTA's subsidy, $7.6 million to CARTA for operations.
So I want to make a quick note about the ones for which you see there are no historical data. The reason is because we have not consistently funded these other requests, and these particular requests are being funded in this budget using non-recurring revenue, different sources.
ARP?
So, in a couple of cases, it's ARP. In another case, it is. I don't want to misspeak. Let me check my notes. But the point is that the reason that we wanted to display this one in this manner is to say that these are priorities that are important to all of us, and we are again coming out of this period of time in which we enjoyed effectively a $40 million bolt-on to the budget because of federal dollars. Those dollars are going away. Yet we have organizations who are doing good work out there, who continue to come back and request funding from the city. And we are going to have to do, to Councilman Henderson's earlier point, on a go forward, we're gonna really have to sharpen our pencils and work in partnership with you guys to determine what the true priorities are and making sure that those dollars are reflected in our budgets moving forward. So we are, to summarize, so we are able to do this level of funding for those for which you do not see historical data in this budget. But this is one-time, non-recurring appropriations.
All right, and just to,
Kevin, can I interrupt you just a second? So they can't hear the three of you in the room, so they're asking if you can project your voices because they can't hear it on the TV.
Sure.
you can't hear
They
it.
can hear everybody else, but they can't
They can't hear us.
Yeah, that's why I was
Specifically
pushing
Chair
that
Notley,
down.
Weston.
I think it's that mic that needs
Which
to
I wanna hear.
Which three?
Okay,
Say yes.
Yeah.
whoever is texting,
Can you hear me now?
whoever's texting Mandy, can I get a confirmation that this is better?
Yeah, tell us, okay. So,
Thank y'all.
while we're getting all that together and whatnot, so Councilman Elliott, to your question, I just wanna make sure I have your question, how are the agencies funded and from what source? When you talk about this, what page is this, B 123 or whatever?
Yep.
Okay, and so you want that information?
Not as much, I was just curious.
Oh,
But one question I do have, how much, and this we can follow up on, this slide aside, how much in ARP funding is left?
Sure.
'Cause I know we have to exhaust it by the end of this year.
I will give you a full rundown of that. I'll give the whole council a full rundown of that. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but we have,
In the next year? Okay.
What do you mean, like in the next year?
Okay,
Like,
and
you
then,
won't- you have
so
to
you wanna
stay
know
in
how
this
much,
fiscal budget?
how much ARP funding
it
is
has to be
remaining? Okay, so not the one about how they're funded, but just how much ARPA money is remaining. And then, any other questions before I move to Councilman Henderson?
I would like to know more about C&E and Habitat for Humanity's work. Going into this budget year. We can talk about that one offline.
Yeah, and also, prior to you coming in, you do have a packet here, and it's the nonprofit,
Yep, I
Mayor's
got this
Primary.
right here.
And so that way, it does have a little information, but we'll make sure we get, you said C&E and who else?
Habitat for Humanity.
Habitat and Habitat, all right.
Madam Chair,
Just a second,
Oh, just a minute, yeah.
Councilman Henderson. You have a question?
Okay. Chief, I'm curious, and I'd like to know of these that we are funding out of this budget, how many of you did receive ARP dollars?
okay,
I mean,
Henderson.
I
the
think-
overlap.
Yeah, and I think the school board, you know, there's always a danger of getting those ARP dollars, getting those out the door, and now those monies dry up, and all of these agencies, you know, come knocking on the door.
Yes, sir.
I can, real quick, I can tell you, Partnership did, Community Haven.
Just send me
did,
an email.
So how many,
I have it in writing.
so how many of the agencies received ARPA funding,
Yeah.
right? Okay,
why, so you say these are one-time dollars. They're obviously in the general fund budget. And I'm assuming you're saying those would be cut next year.
That's right. So the reason that I wanted to,
Why put them in this year?
yeah, the reason that we wanted to display them here is because that is where they need to live in the context of our budget framework. And the reason that I put this particular screenshot up was so that those organizations that are listening and watching, and so that you guys all know that for them, this is a one-time allocation, even though they are existing in the general fund for this fiscal year. They are not to expect general funding from the city of Chattanooga on a go-forward because they are being funded with non-recurring revenue.
Well, but they also understood that those ARP dollars were one-time funds as well. So, I mean, it looks like they've already gotten their warning.
They have, and I think,
So why fund them for another year to say, this is it?
yeah.
When, and understand, the questions that I'm asking, and let's go back to priorities, it's all about, you know, Dr. Burrs always said your budget should reflect your priorities. And as you have pointed out, there's one glaring omission.
Yes, sir.
In this budget, as far as our fire and police, so, you know, to me, that would go a long way. Again, those are general fund dollars, which could be reoccurring.
Well, they are not general fund dollars.
These are not, these,
It says general
Yeah,
fund.
that's the,
These-
that was the question, Councilman Elliott asked, earlier, like, how are these agencies funded and from what source? And so Kevin mentioned that some of those are ARP funded, some of them not, and so that'll be a list, I'm gonna put it back on, I know you don't,
So,
but I'll put it back on the list to get how each of these
okay,
is
I didn't
funded.
understand, the question.
Oh, you're just fine.
I need to be more
All about
precise in my
clarity.
language. They need to exist in the general fund from a budgeting structure perspective, like for this
But if
fiscal year.
if we're not funding them going forward, why would they need to be there?
Well, because, and Weston, if you wanna correct me here if I move my skis, but it's because these are operating dollars that we typically fund operations out of the general fund bucket. But the bucket is filled with revenue that is both recurring, and because we still have some remaining one-time funds available to us, a portion of that bucket is non-recurring revenue that is available to us in this fiscal year, but won't be available for us in the future.
Okay,
Is that accurate?
yeah, okay, so are you okay, you want us to send you more?
We will do a follow-up on this, and I'll make it,
I didn't see it.
and I apologize for not being precise in my language.
Yeah. Feel like you got it now, like, you know, you got it now, and you saved up for it, and now you spend it.
Councilman Henderson,
Yeah, you
are
have-
you suggesting that we should pull these out and just enumerate them separately and not include them under agencies funded under 1100?
Well, I mean, I mean, we didn't put any of the agencies that were funded through the ARP dollars in a line item like this before.
Okay.
No.
That's what's confusing me.
Okay,
Okay.
so why move, why
Let us
is
put-
it move now?
Let us put our heads together on getting more clarity around why it is looking this way. And then we'll follow up with sources of funding. We'll show the ARPA carryover, those agencies for which ARPA dollars were used, and we'll get specifics around CNE, Habitat. We'll get specifics around each one and what these dollars will be used for in this fiscal year.
Let's also
So-
include if they have been funded previously with general fund dollars, because while we've had ARPA, these agencies existed before ARPA.
That's right.
And were part of general fund funding for some of them decades.
Okay, so
Got
who,
it.
so
So let's
then,
not get them, if it's not a ARPA issue, let's not get it mixed up with ARPA, even though they also potentially received ARPA.
so historical funding requests or funding allocations to all the agencies as well. So historical funding, ARPA allocations to those that have ARPA allocations, and then,
Like 15 years worth of funding for them. Let's get that list.
15.
Good God.
Dang, I get you, 15 years, that's true, 15.
Tell me,
So
you know, how
15
much
years
is
worth
the,
of
you know,
budget.
design
I would
studio?
think 15 years, that's, okay, so 15 years worth of funding for them. Let's see, how many of the agencies receive the ARPA funding. I just wanna make sure I get it in the city and habitat, but overall, you're just gonna get information for all of them,
Yeah,
just to
Yep,
make sure.
I'm tracking
everybody
with
has-
what you're saying, and we'll show
Okay.
that. We don't, basically, we don't want to, just because one of these organizations or some combination were funded through ARPA dollars when they were available, does not mean, it's not
Like Habitat,
mutually
yeah.
exclusive to whether or not they were historically funded from the general fund. And
Right.
so we want to
So like
show
partnership,
the
habitat,
change
all
over
those
time.
there. Okay, so real quick, let me just, I'm so sorry, Madam Chair, I'm trying to make sure I keep the order here. Councilman Henderson,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
apologize. Did you have any additional questions or comments
Well,
that you needed?
I did, and I see Charles here, but, and this may be a whole separate question, I mean, like, maybe a session, but, because this is part of subsidy, now this is kind of making me want, so is the additional 1.8 million, is that a one-time, or is that gonna be recurring?
So the administration would like for it to be recurring. We believe that Carter has been historically underfunded for quite a long time. And Mayor Kelly has made a commitment to truing them up and getting them on better financial footing. By this increase, there was a request last year that we did not meet, and it was at the same level. And so we do hope that we are able to fund them at this level on a go forward. But that's a conversation that we will continue to have with you guys.
And I thought I saw it on here somewhere, maybe it's not, but the library, I believe we've increased them 500,000 as well.
We have.
Is that a one-time, is that recurring?
That is another one that we hope would be recurring. But again, this all goes back to, we are navigating brackish waters right now where we're coming out of, we've had access to additional incremental capital that we no longer have. And so as we have this conversation this fiscal year, we need to take a fresh look at all of our priorities against the reality of the fiscal constraints that we face.
Well, I mean, we just gotta learn to wean some people off of this additional cash that we've
Here.
Yes, sir.
that we've had.
Which is part of what I'm intending to do here in this conversation,
Yes,
by showing that there are no historicals, and these are one-time dollars for those for which there are no historicals.
right. So you'll pull the information together. Councilman Henderson, any other questions as of right now? Okay, thank you so much. I'm just doing a follow-up round of, Madam Chair Hill, did you have additional questions or anything you want to add to the pod?
I do.
Okay.
So something to consider with why I'm asking for the 15 years is because not only are we looking at what have we as a city over the last decade and a half looked to our nonprofits to carry a burden, and what potentially has the city picked up over the years and added to our bureaucracy, right?
ma'am.
So partnership for family, child, and adults, it'll be interesting to know that 150, is that for their shelter for women and children, or is it for the rape crisis?
This is for the rape
It's always
crisis
rape
center.
crisis
You know,
center, yeah.
so then we know, we've created the Family Justice Center, for example. We've, Habitat for Humanity's been building houses for how long? And now we've moved a lot of money into a city department and into a different pot. So that's why that's important.
Absolutely.
Related to this same section, not on this slide, and so it may be that we're coming to it. The Quasi Agencies Heritage Hall Fund and Chattanooga Public Library Fund, I'm confused on a couple of these slides about, I don't know if we've got numbers flipped or if I just don't understand what those funds are.
So we're coming to that.
We're coming to
Yeah,
that, great, okay.
You sure,
That's
any
all.
other questions?
No,
Madam?
thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so Councilman Elliott, followed by Councilman Clark.
Two questions. Hey, Madam Chair, I want to make sure you had on your list, I think Kevin has this, but funding sources.
Yeah, the funding
got it.
sources for each
Okay.
one,
I know
yes,
Kevin has
yes.
that one. And then Kevin, how many of these are coming from multi-year RFP awards?
So none of these are coming from multi-year RFP awards. That
Okay.
is a separate section that we're going to cover here in a minute.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Right, any other questions, Councilman Elliott?
No, ma'am, thank you.
Can I say one more thing, because I think it might clarify, and I know that we're spending probably more time than we should on this, but I think it's important. So, as you'll recall, at the beginning of the Kelly administration, we rolled out an RFP process, the intent behind which was to move away from what was then just an annual appropriations process, right, directly to agencies. And so what the Kelly administration said at the time was, hey, let's define some categories where we feel the city is not the best entity to carry out these functions that we feel are part of the portfolio of services that we should be providing. Let's go find third-party organizations who can do that. And then, so that it's not this annual circus, let's do an RFP process and lock them into 4-year contracts. So we did that. Well, then COVID happened, or COVID was happening at the same time. But there then also came this $40 million additional unanticipated source of federal revenue. And so then we kind of said, well, hey, now we got all this revenue, and so bring us your proposals that fit this, this new set of priorities that we have in light of both the changing conditions pursuant to COVID and this additional funding. And so new agencies who may or may not have been participating in the RFP process also started to come to the city. And so because of those dynamics, again, not to overuse the phrase, we're in this weird brackish water period where we're coming out of having access to additional non-recurring revenue year in and year out. On top of having access to the capital, some of the projects that were funded through ARPA did not materialize, and so we could reprogram the ARPA dollars, which kind of going back to your point, Councilman Henderson, it was one-time dollars the first time, and then conditions changed, things got shuffled around, they came back, and we actually had one-time dollars for another one time, right? And so it's just been a dynamic tension that we've been trying to manage. We continue to try to manage out of it while we are drawing down, really now we're like at the dregs, right, of this barrel of one-time dollars. And so what we're trying to do in this budget is continue to fund those priorities for which we've been making meaningful progress, but we're also trying to send the right message to those partner agencies so that they have crystal clarity that this is not going to be the dynamic next year because we don't have this funding available on a recurring basis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate that, Kevin. And I think to a couple of points of my colleagues, I hope as we move out of this kind of like weird space we're in, especially what Chairwoman Hill just said, things is an opportunity for us to kind of pop the hood to see how we've been allocating funds throughout the years, and then making sure that we are getting the most bang for our buck as a community.
Absolutely.
And, I think at the time that for multi-year RFP process may have made sense. I would love to see what does that look like as we reconsider that going forward. And it's really kind of untangle this web. So I appreciate you asking for 15 years because it goes back a ways, but
Makes sense now.
I would like to see who has been getting these funds and honestly, like, what benefit are people receiving from it? So, thank you. And so that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Councilman Elliott, and Councilman Clark, and then we'll.
I'm actually gonna yield time back, cause I just realized that I got kinda lost in the shuffle.
That's okay.
With all the multiple
right.
questions, which are great,
Explain to me.
but you guys are going into quasi agencies?
Yes.
Okay, so after we finish all of that, I'll yield my time for more questions after we've done this, if that's okay.
So just moving your time to a little further down.
Well, I think it's all encompassing.
It is,
They're asking
it is,
some very
it is.
specific
I
agency
love it.
questions.
Just trying to lighten the mood sometimes. Lighten the mood. So we have all our agency questions, and we will get and then Kevin and administration will get a summary for you all for that. And if you have additional questions, email them to Kim and Kevin, and they'll add they'll get that updated. Okay.
All right, let's jump into quasi agencies.
Perfect. And you can stop me if I know we had some questions. So Heritage Hall, proposed budget of $97,000. Heritage Hall is Bessie Smith Center. It's our portion of the cost to operate that, which is a decrease from last year of $10,000. The Chattanooga Public Library Fund, $7.8 million, increase of roughly $400,000. 95 of that was the risk charge that they got hit with, but then a big chunk of the 300 is also the COLA, the pay increases for their folks.
Say again, I couldn't hear you.
The pay increases, the COLA, the 3% for the folks over there make up a big chunk of the 300, and then the 95 is the risk management fee that we charge per head. The Human Services and Community Development Fund grant supplements are there, roughly $500,000 to help support the salaries for the folks in those grants. The RPA and air pollution appropriations are listed there.
Any questions about quasi agencies?
I just have
Hey,
one.
just real quick, Madam Chair, and then, Councilman Elliott.
My question is more, I don't know if I'm seeing a discrepancy or I just don't understand between page B 129, where we've got Heritage Hall Fund at 97 and Public Library at 7.8 versus slide B 125, where we have Heritage Hall at 7.8 and we have Public Library at 480. I'm just confused about what I'm seeing on those two different slides. B 125 and B 129.
Okay.
I don't know if those are like savings account funds, you know,
Okay. So you need clarity on those numbers
Yep.
for,
yeah, or is it a typo?
B 125 and B 129 concerning the library and what else?
Heritage Hall and the library,
Yeah,
I just,
Heritage Hall and the library.
there's a discrepancy between how those numbers are showing up. And actually, Human Services is 480
Right.
on page 129,
But then,
and on page 125, Public Library is
I
429.
believe
and Human
one
Services-
twenty-five is incorrect, so I'll get that
Okay,
updated.
all right, cool.
so they'll get those.
Did this table just not update maybe?
I think
Yeah, it
it's
could be.
swapped around.
Oh, okay.
We'll get that cleaned up,
So
thank you,
updated,
Chairwoman.
so we need updated tables on B 125 and 129.
I
Okay,
think 129 might be correct. That's all, thank you.
that's it, okay. All right, Councilman Elliott and then Councilman Clark.
For the OFE grants, can you talk about that decrease, the community development, fund? What's getting cut in that? And the reason I ask, and I think to be more point, I know a couple years ago we supplemented some pay increases for them. I think the big question is that gonna be impacted going forward?
I do not know the answer offhand. Councilman Elliott, I will follow up with you.
Okay, that's no problem.
So just the OFE, grant supplement decrease, the reason or
Yeah,
reason for that,
yeah,
okay?
Yes.
All right, Council, any other questions, Councilman Elliott?
No, ma'am, thank
All
you.
right, Councilman Clark?
Yes, ma'am. Quick question. I know we have for the nonprofits, and I know we're getting to that, and it's mostly metrics. When these agencies submit, or as we're budgeting for them, do we know what their line item requests are?
We do.
Okay.
So for
Can
the
you give me an
art,
example on one, like maybe for like Heritage Hall Fund,
I don't have that one handy.
or just one you may know? Just
Sure, so for, let's talk about the public library. So this is to fund a couple of, I think it's 2 extra positions
Okay.
to expand their capacity. So for the library, to contextualize it, pre-COVID, I think they were somewhere in the neighborhood of 117 people from a staffing perspective. Now they're hovering around 80. And so as we retrenched in response to COVID, and then as COVID abated and things came back online and people started utilizing the library again, now we're building back up.
Gotcha.
And so this is a reflection of their need to expand their capacity to respond to the increase in utilization of the
And
library.
maybe this was sent to me, I'm not sure, I haven't gone through this in full. Is that something that we can get,
Yeah.
or has it already been
Absolutely.
sent, or,
Do you want it for all the quasi agencies, their,
yes, and I'm
full
gonna
budget?
ask the same question when we move into the nonprofits, because what we have are the metrics.
That's right.
Which are fine,
Yep.
but I'd like to know.
What are they
Like for the
doing?
Tennessee
Yeah.
River part, for the enterprise stuff, like what have they actually told you that they're gonna be using that money for? And just to prepare us, maybe as we move into the other section, for me, as a new council person, and as for all of us, and I'll speak for myself, but we have to be able to, and we've talked about this in our budget session, I need to be able to talk about
Explain it.
the cost-benefit analysis for my people in every district. Be it citywide, we can explain that. Be it district-wide. So like, for instance, if the design studio as an agency, for instance, there's not a percentage of change, but there's 70,000, like, what is it for? Like, what is the benefit to us? In numeric form?
Sure, so,
Is that clear?
yes, it is clear. I could respond to that one as an example, but
Yeah.
I will certainly give you all of the budget justifications that you're asking for, and I think
Because I think,
that's good.
anyway, that's a statement, but yeah, I would, if we could, just for so I can
Yeah.
meet on this a
That's
little
right.
bit. I love to be able to articulate on each of those agency line items, even with the percent of change, be it what it is. I like to know like line item, like, hey, partnership, what are you doing? Hey, library, air pollution board, you know. I get some of those quasi things are essential
Yep.
functions for our government, but and some of the general agency organizations that are non-quasi, I just like to kind of get a more in-depth, and I'll probably want the exact same thing when we move into the other agencies under the
Yeah,
item. So-
absolutely. And let's make a note of that, Weston, because one of the things that we want to do, councilman and council, we want our budgets to be crystal clear, right? Like, I'm so big on, let's give all of the information so that anybody can drop in, read it, and understand what it is that we're doing. And so I think that this is an opportunity for us to build out a net new section in our budget where we go through and we put the budget justifications for all of the outside agencies that enumerate exactly what Councilman Clark has described. So I think that's a great suggestion. We'll get that.
And Councilman Dolly, similar to the capital projects, how it's outlined through the categories into the council districts, is that something similar that you could do for the quasi-agency governments, or
Yeah,
is that similar?
Yep, that is not probably an immediate thing.
Sure.
But yes, so, and I've talked with, I think, most of you about this. We are developing right now with our GIS folks over at RPA. They're helping me with a project where I'm putting together a council district by council district digital map with layers. And this is a perfect example of one of the layers that you would be able to filter on to see, you know, what are the ARPA funded or historically ARPA funded? What are the operational funded organizations? And then you should be able to hover over it, get the budget justification, and it can all live there. So yes, we want to move in that direction and make that happen.
I just want to be able to tell my people in District 5
No
what they're
doubt.
getting out of each of those line item
Yes, sir.
budgets.
I want that for
when
you
it comes
too.
to those
Yep.
agencies.
Yeah, and we can provide the budgets for all the quasi-agencies for you guys.
Gotcha.
And see those
Thank
line
you.
items for them.
And so just for clarity, Councilman Clark, you want budget justifications for not only the quasi-agencies, but also for the agencies we just reviewed.
That's right.
In addition to the ones that are coming up, the RFPs that are coming through, the RFPs to agencies through the departments as well, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions regarding quasi-agencies? All right.
So then, knowing that we are going to follow up with you guys to that end, can I just show you these slides? Because it'll contextualize where these RFPs currently exist, because they exist inside, they're managed by the department. And so the way that we have them built out is like this. So for community arts programming, here are the organizations that are funded through the RFP process for that work, for that body of work. For early learning. For economic and workforce development. For homeless support services. And then these are categorically social service providers tucked into the respective departments as outlined.
So this is different than the agency RFP summary on 133.
Yes, it is.
These are all over
Through the departments.
through the departments.
That are part of the 4-year RFP contracts.
But that's what this 4-year RFP is on 133. But you're saying that
So we talked about partnership earlier is kind of an example. So going back to this slide up here, Chairwoman, this appropriation is distinct from the appropriation that is made through the RFP process that's enumerated at the bottom of this chart.
So, for instance, like the 150 from the previous chart is for them to, I think, feasibility study to build out for the Rape Crisis Center, whereas this is for the Rape Crisis Center.
For the
To
operations.
operations of it. So that's kind of how, and I guess when you do it, you'll send those distinctions between those, but that's
sure.
what would it be. I just know that one just because that was just in our.
Yeah, and that's a good example. So in some instances, we had the ability to come in and kind of plus up funding under a bucket that was kind of predetermined to be an area of focus for the administration. So partnership is a good example of that, whereas the RFP provides $80,000 of operational support. Because of the availability of one-time funding, we were able to meet a request they made, this year for incremental money. So I think they asked for like $500,000 and we put we funded them at 150 with one-time dollars as a supplement.
Yeah, I think my question is, you all have broken this out into individual tables.
Right, this
but
is-
within the budget document on B-133, we have a single table
Yeah.
that lists out all of, my question is this table that lists all of the RFP agencies, does that have every one of these,
Yes.
or do I have to somehow
No,
cross-reference?
if you'll go back,
Because I thought
there,
this was.
look, there you go. So the 377, that should be the total you have proposed, 26.
377.
So this is broken out more of a functional area, where this is by department. So if you go to the next tab, you'll see kind of the departments in these columns, but some of them have multiple departments, or they span a couple different
Right,
ones.
so social service, whereas, yeah, in early learning, I've got the speech and hearing center
Yep, so here it's,
here, and you've got it under social service there, but this is still on 133.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. Yes.
B-133
Right.
is representative
same.
of every RFP that we did 3 or 4 years ago. So my real question for this was, is this the final fiscal year of these grants? I was thinking last year was the final fiscal year of
4
these.
years. I think this is the.
This is it.
This is the final year.
This is the final year
final
of those,
fiscal year
of those
grants.
4-year contracts. They expire in the summer of
Okay, this-
2026.
Yeah, because we
Okay.
came in 21, but we passed the 22 budget.
Right.
So then 26 budget would be the
Okay.
final, okay.
So this is the last year that these are in effect, and so we've gotta make a plan over the next 12 months to
Right.
identify what we wanna do before next budget.
Right.
Right.
To untangle
Okay.
this web.
It's just a perfect time,
Yep.
for us to do, pop the hood, as you all said. Councilman Elliott?
Madam Chair, I see on this metric sheet, Chat Foundation's winter warming shelter. Is this a mistake, or are we funding them? Because I don't see them on this list here.
So they are on this list. Let's
They're on B-133.
Okay, so no, they are funded, they get that funding through the contract that we have with the Regional Homelessness Coalition, so it's a.
Gotcha,
yep.
gotcha, gotcha.
So they're third party.
Okay, perfect, all right. Just
Right.
curious.
Councilman Elliott, have any other questions?
No, ma'am.
All right. Any other questions regarding the RFPs to agencies? Okay.
Okay, so to add further confusion to this. All right. This is you know what? Let's not do this slide. We understand the information. We understand the information that you guys need. And I think that you understand the web that this is.
Yes,
Let me
this is
just
the
say
same
this.
information.
This slide is reflective of most of the information that preceded it, with a couple of exceptions, because we were able, for the Bethlehem Center, Hope for the Inner City, for launch, we were able to utilize interest dollars that we earned against ARPA dollars that were sitting in an account to make this appropriations proposal to those specific organizations, for whom I will follow up with budget justifications.
All right. Councilman Clark?
So yes, I am starting to feel a little overwhelmed. But it's
all right.
okay. So thank you for your patience with the new guys as we are learning. Quick question, Kevin. So is it possible that organizations, and I know we're gonna get down to the capital budget later in the day, but this is just a question from some documents that we've received. If you were an organization that is currently receiving RFPs through agencies, could you possibly be also reflected as a capital budget project line item? Are there organizations that are getting both?
Yes.
Okay,
There are.
and we will discuss that in that portion labeled capital budget?
Correct.
Okay, because I like to know where the duplications are.
That's right.
'Cause I haven't seen
Yep,
it
so,
updated.
so the city would provide operations support separate from
The capital.
supporting a capital project.
Okay. But we do have organizations that are receiving both.
We do.
Okay, cool.
And then, so that's just, you just wanna know who is receiving duplicate.
Yes,
Funded
and that
sources.
might be answered when they talk in the section labeled capital budget, is that correct?
I think it will be. I think we'll get to,
So maybe we can just table that,
Okay,
Councilwoman Dottley, and it will get answered in that section.
okay, that works. Any other questions? Yes, Madam Chair.
Well, just looking at all these asterisks of non-recurring revenue and kind of the discussion, to some extent, that like Friends of the Zoo and the Chattanooga Zoo has long-standing decades gotten support from the city of
Absolutely.
Chattanooga. And yet, there's a project in the capital budget that's funded with non-recurring revenue. Coolidge National Medal of Honor Heritage Center, that was a one-time $200,000 for a specific project that apparently was funded with recurring revenue, but is not an indication that we're going to do $200,000 every single year. So this asterisk situation
This isn't
and the
helpful.
non-recurring, recurring, in
Yep.
some ways adds a level of complexity that may or may not be useful in every
Yes, ma'am.
conversation.
And I have to give some props to our COO, Mandy, who said, this slide is going to confuse people. And I was like, no, and I said, I think I can talk through it. And I have now proven her to be correct.
I don't think we're becoming a $200,000 annual donor to.
We are not,
Right.
we are not. I'm sorry, this is not effective, and I apologize. We will follow up, we will clean it up, and you guys are going to get everything that you
No
need.
worries.
Right.
Got this
And
document.
also, do note, we will have, and Kevin had it, and I had discussed doing, what amount would be non-recurring for our FY '26 budget? Is it, no, FY '27 budget then?
We're in 26,
Since
so
that
in
FY
27,
budget,
what,
what
that's
funds
good.
will not be recurring, so that we can have a better
Yeah.
picture as we go, as we finish this project and be done with it, then saying, okay, what is not recurring? How much, pretty much, will we have? I ain't gonna say open, I'm not gonna say open, cause I'm very much about conservative budgeting and saving a good amount of money. But how much will we have kind of available going into our next year? So as you kind of look at this, think about, you see these ones that are here that more than likely won't be here next year, or they may be here in a smaller capacity, or whatever the case may be. So just kind of be thinking about that too.
Is there wiggle room to add to this, or historically, have we done that in this setting, in this process, during this process?
Typically, no, we don't add. Once it's here, because that's what the majority of the year is for. It is, okay, what are those primary or core projects, priority projects in your district, working with the administration to see how we can get that aligned. Because sometimes you don't need capital, sometimes you just need public works.
Right.
So it just depends on what you're doing. So that's kind of where we are now. These are some ones that were advocated for, have been there, and just kind of, at this point, just kind of wrapping it up. And I love the idea of taking a look under the hood. So that's what, and you all are coming in a great time for us to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited about that.
So is there room for like amending this? Like, if I wanted to say, hey, I want to add it,
Well, we don't
have a discussion, is that,
don't
what's the
money.
setting for that?
Well, it's a tight year, so we don't really have any money. Now, we can look at amending it, because as the city council, that is our
Sure.
obligation to, approve the budget and things like that. It's all about the time frame at this point. The comptroller has required us to have this in and done by June 30th. We do not want to be last on the list to get that in, because we don't want any additional issues. So you got to kind of look at the time, at this point, the time frame of what we're doing. So this may not be the best juncture to do those amendments. However, well, we can discuss other things offline.
Yeah, it's just
Yes.
I guess a format question, like,
Yeah.
as we are discussing this, as a new council person, this is a budget request. And we're looking at it under the hood. Sometimes, when you're doing repairs, you gotta get a new car.
You do?
You have to replace cars, and there is no need for repair. And so my question is, I guess, is there opportunities, and I don't know if it's in this setting or as we go through the budget process, when and where do we have that discussion to say, hey, Councilwoman Dotley, what are your thoughts? And I know we have to do it in a public hearing, but what are your thoughts about, say, and I don't want to use an example because then it'll,
Okay, it's all right.
it'll be called, Dennis wants to slash that. But
Right.
what is the, I guess, the attitude or the format to have that discussion, if at all? And I'm just putting it out there.
This is the format to
Okay.
have it. This is the format to have those conversations. I would say gather your information, maybe have a meeting with the administration about whatever changes you're looking to. And you want to keep in mind, a lot of these are in particular people's district.
That's right.
It impacts everybody.
That's right.
But they're in district, so you may want to, I wouldn't say chat with that person, but just once you get the justification for the budget.
Thank you, yeah.
And do it in that, kind of look at it in that way and weigh in the time that we have, the time frame that we have, not just the administration's goals, but our goals as a council,
yeah.
and saying, okay, do we want these are these goals that we want to achieve? And knowing that, and then with the understanding that a lot of these are non-recurring and, may not be more than likely in the budget next year. So what does that look like in the question that you asked, or what are you looking to amend? And then also, I would say also with the budget justification, that we get the impact too. Like, what impact have these organizations had on our community? Like, because we really need that at
That's
the
right.
end of the day.
And that's why I asked for that line item. And so what I would like to do after review, for me, you know, when we vote, I'd like to review that, and then I'd like to, as the chair of this committee, I'd like to submit that directly to you, Councilwoman
fine.
Dotley, for review and discussion, you know.
That is fine. And then
And
also,
you can communicate with the
okay.
administrative team, if that's okay with you.
That is just fine, and you're also welcome to reach out to any of those organizations too, if you want to have a meeting or discussion about maybe some things you see that you want to adjust or whatever or if you need more information directly from them. You the councilman, and you can reach out to them as well. So yeah, feel free to submit it to me, and we can get with administration and work it out and see what it is that we can maneuver some things or
Because
around.
what we're hearing, and I've heard this through some dialogue even from Councilwoman Hill, is that there might be opportunity, even as a new council person, I'm hearing information from new organizations who historically, over a 15 to 10 year period, has not been included in this club of funding. And so we have new organizations that might be covering new ground. And I just wanted to know what that format is and how open we are to discussing actually adding and maybe looking to like really do a deep dive analysis, because as I look at some of these organizations, there's two of them, as Councilman Elliott has mentioned, that are doing speech therapy. And so where there's duplicate services, maybe we could have that discussion openly once we, of course, get the line item. But then if there's time in this process, because I know we are tight on time, that we can have a discussion about, you know, are we open to possible amendments in addition to this group? So not to rock the boat, but because money is tight and these organizations are depending on us even for this one-time amount, and these are all essentials. I just want to know, is there room? And there might not be.
There's always room for discussion, if
Okay,
nothing else.
gotcha.
So I would highly recommend whatever proposals or whatever information you have, that you have it next week, by next Tuesday
Gotcha.
for our next budget session.
To keep us on track, and I appreciate you allowing us to do that.
Oh, no, it is fine. I mean, because at the end of the day, we are responsible for the people's money.
Right.
And we have to be making sure that we're doing what's right. So
Gotcha.
we'll definitely always opportunity to take a look at
All right,
that.
thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you,
And Councilman Clark, could I jump in and say
Yes,
that,
sir.
and you know this, but you guys were just sworn in less than 30 days ago, right? And so unfortunately, you're at a disadvantage with this particular budget cycle. Our hope as the administration, to Chairwoman's point, is that as we continue a partnership with you in this upcoming year, we have understanding throughout the year through conversations and working on various projects with you that you are communicating to us the priorities, that we are capturing those, tracking those, and that as we lead up into, because a lot of work went into this budget before you guys were sworn in, because
Sure.
it just takes a long time. And as we're building the budget and have the proper runway for the next year, that your priorities are appropriately captured and reflected.
And I know I actually think we're at an advantage being new council people because we're bringing new perspectives.
Fresh eyes.
I disagree with you
Right.
respectfully. As a matter of fact, I think we have a mandate as new council people to make sure that our perspectives, which is why I asked you that question. And thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing us to do that, because my people are saying we want something new.
Yeah.
That's why we got a new council guy.
Yeah, that's right. No, it is an
So
advantage
I
in
think
that
we're
way.
actually at an advantage, and I wouldn't dare go back and tell any of my people that because I'm new, you may not be able to be added into this budget cycle. We may be new council people, but we're not new to the needs, knowing the needs of this community. And I appreciate Councilwoman Dotley for allowing us to be open-minded about if there is room, and we've had a discussion, Kevin.
Yeah, for sure.
There are certain things I know I can't ask for in this budget. I wish all of 9 of us wish we can get everything we want, but that's not feasible. But I am going to ask, and I'm going to be on record and asking for my people, because that's what they asked me to do on March 4th.
Yep.
So next week, if there is opportunity, and I don't know if there is, we're getting, requests from organizations that might be on here or that might not be on here. But if there's opportunity and room for discussion with that, Councilwoman Dollar, I'd like to get that to you by next week.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks so much. And, any other questions in regards to the RFPs to agencies, knowing that we'll be getting the budget justifications and additional information? And I don't know what they're gonna do with this slide, but I'm sure we're gonna see
Delete
it
it.
again. All right, so we're making really good time, council. We're at 10:53. Y'all know I love a good, swift and efficient meeting, and informative meetings as well.
That's right.
So we'll move on into operations, and we'll see how far we get,
Yes, we will.
before we take our break.
And you want to break it at 11:30, is that right?
11:30, we'll see where we at, but yes, that's the goal.
All right, let's jump in.
I'm gonna.
I want to get it so bad. Okay, okay. Okay.
Alright, so we'll hop right in. So the executive branch has a proposed budget of $7.7 million, an increase of $953,000. This budget includes 48 authorized positions with no net change in total positions. There were some changes, just not a net change. So you can see those fluctuations in positions down at the bottom, including a new front desk receptionist at the FJC and some folks transferred over from economic development, senior advisor for economic and workforce development, and chief policy officer.
And for this, because that is a lot of money, and though I am very much a fan of Mayor Kelly, that is a lot. So could you all, kind of break down what each, and y'all don't have to give it to me now, like the different, like Office of Community Health, the different, offices, I guess, under the executive branch, so that we can have a better understanding of what's under there. And, cause the Family Justice Center is still there, is that right? Okay.
Yep.
All right, that's all. Just if you could just send me just a breakdown of
Absolutely.
what offices are under there, that'd be great. That's it, that's all I got. Any other questions about the executive branch? Yes, Chairman,
No, I'm sorry.
Councilman Henderson.
It's very short, if
Oh,
that's
well,
okay.
Councilman Henderson and Councilman Clark,
Okay,
that's
thank
okay, okay.
Chief, I'd like a list of how many Bloomberg initiatives that we are working on, and I'm assuming this is housed in the executive, branch.
Sure.
And then what the cost of those initiatives are.
Sure.
I guess the other thing that I'm a little concerned about is our growth was 3%. Executive branch grew by 14%.
Yep.
How do we justify that type of growth in a general growth of 3%?
Sure. So, certainly we'll follow up with you on, and each of you, with that question, and then kind of the line by line. I will say that the primary driver of this is personnel, and it is relative to what was enacted in FY '25. When we did the amendment, we moved some additional positions underneath the executive, and then we also just transferred from economic development, both the senior advisor role, which is a senior position, and the chief policy officer, which was formerly the chief housing officer, pulled that out of economic development and into the administration, into the executive branch, that is. So, yes, we'll certainly get
So
you.
what would that, so what would the executive branch look like, taking those new positions out? What kind of growth was
Yeah,
that? And that can be
Yeah, so if we back.
that can be a research question. You understand what I'm saying?
I do, yeah, we can show you that.
Take
yeah,
those new positions out,
and see where it would fall,
see
yeah,
what that looks like.
yeah. Back of the napkin, it would be significantly less, probably half or less, just those positions.
And cause the DTS move in here, or some people from, there
So,
was some shifts there.
so when we, in the amendment, when we got rid of IDP, we took some project managers that would have fallen under IDP and pulled them into the executive branch. We also pulled in Steve Homaker, his role.
What does he do?
He is overseeing the implementation of the branding project, so he's like the design,
Oh, that's right.
I think it's director of city design, so he helps all the departments come into conformity with what we're doing from a branding perspective, and then he helps us design materials for dissemination in the community, both online and in print.
Okay.
One
For
follow-up.
Henderson,
What was why the increase in travel?
why the increase in
Yeah, so, let me get a line item, see if that was a line item justification. I know that in years past, the mayor, some of his obligations to attend conferences around the country, I think that we had gone over previous budget allocations, and so we're trying to plus it up to reflect what we anticipate to be the true needs based on historical patterns.
Now, did you say obligations to attend?
I did, yes, sir.
Oh,
You
boy.
went there?
His attendance at conferences throughout
Okay,
previous
thank you.
years. And other events. I mean, listen, so part of the, and I understand where you're coming from, but I will defend them, I will defend it in this way. You know, part of the mayor's role is to be the chief spokesman and face for the city.
I understand.
And the work that he does around the country is really important for us and has knock-on incremental benefit to the city because he is out there selling Chattanooga and representing us and forging new partnerships, not only with the Bloombergs of the world, but with, you know, Accelerator for America or with Harvard or with, I mean, you can go down a list of giving us the ability to start talking with people who bring a level of expertise that we wouldn't have access to outside of those relationships. And so the work that he's doing on that front, I think is really important for the city. And I would say is a core function of his role and the mayor's role, like that office for the city is to be out there making those relationships and representing Chattanooga across the country.
Okay.
But yes, we will follow up with some
Okay,
specifics.
and Councilman Henderson, initially you said you want the cost of some initiatives. I didn't hear the Bloomberg initiative. Okay. All right. Any other questions?
And maybe, any other
Yeah,
initiatives?
yeah, we'll give you the rundown. And
Okay.
I'm like 99.9% sure that there isn't a cost associated with Bloomberg. That's grant funded.
And then Councilman Clark.
Yeah, Chip took one of my questions, but it's okay. In reference to the travel budget, because it's the highest increase percentage of change in the executive branch, which is fine. I understand we all travel to represent our city. Most of us travel for professional development. And I understand that the mayor does have an obligation to go. Please go and represent our city. But going back to what Chip mentioned earlier is that as we are budgeting for priorities, when we are asking us to be lean, you know, usually those non-essential times or items such as a 69%, you know, percent of change seems a bit excessive for travel. Something to review. I would love to understand what travel is like on an annual basis. I would like to go. I mean, y'all are increasing it, you know, increase our travel budget. I could use some professional development. But what I'm saying is in times of, we got a travel budget, not as big as this one.
It ain't as big as this one.
It's not as big as this one.
I don't got nothing.
Ronald doesn't have a travel budget. But what I'm saying is, he can use that 17,000.
I sure could I? Just a little bit of it.
I want to go, in other words, like, take me with you, okay? Please send the mayor that if he's watching
I'll pass it
live,
along.
please let him know I'd like to go. But anyway, so that I would be curious to know some historical data about what travels are like. And the second question I have is it's on B141, and it's another large percent of change, and it's in the executive office administrative staff. Of course, we don't have the breakout of that. I think you guys mentioned that would be provided for us.
Yep.
So that percentage of change in the executive administrative, I don't want to use the word staff because it could be anything, but is that what it's for?
It's personnel.
Okay.
Yep.
And are those additions, if so, can you, Councilwoman Dotley, could you, I'm gonna request I'd love to see the breakdown of that specific, line item at CCB 00101.
You said CCB 0.
CCB 00101. For me in particular, I love to see the breakdown of what that particular line item is.
Absolutely.
So let me make sure I got your request. So the travel justification or the budget justification for 69% change, in the travel budget, including historical data, and then what does that, kind of maybe a
Yeah, because
summary
if
what
you're
that
asking
travel
for a
looks like?
percentage of change, I'm imagining that something happened historically that says, oh, we need more to do what,
Right,
right? Or do you need more to go to additional conferences, or
what's the change, what's the
what is
justification?
the justification for the percentage of change to ask for such a large percentage of change in the budget?
And then for page B 141, that line item CCB 00101, just a breakdown of what that is.
Right.
Correct, okay, any other,
Wes,
I was just gonna give
That's
a
all for
little
me,
insight.
Councilwoman.
So the CC stands for cost center, so these are like divisions within the department. So the executive office, admin, or the family justice center, or community health are all separate cost centers that live underneath the executive branch.
Sure.
So then they all have their budgets like 145 through whatever that goes through, 148. They have a budget breakout just like this within each cost center.
Sure.
Like that's like a department as a whole. So we can also get you that. It's just
Yeah, that's fine.
cost breakdown by cost center. So you
And
can see
I guess my question is just really around the high percentage of change.
Sure. Yeah, you want to see the budget justification for the things that are driving that.
Yeah, that's
14%.
driving that, yeah, you don't have. yeah.
Absolutely.
And mostly because if we get asked, I wanna be able to be like, well, you know,
This is
last
what it
year,
is.
we're going to Japan this year, you know, like, I love to know, so.
Do you wanna know about the 400% increase in consultant fees? On page B 145?
that request? Would you like a breakdown
Well,
of that?
while we're in
What item, what line item is that?
Councilwoman Ginger,
145.
where you at?
45, what's the?
Consultant
My 135 is.
Yeah, for sure, and I think that,
Oh,
I think that
145.
for both of these, it's gonna be helpful
Oh, we haven't gotten to that section
to
yet,
do a look back.
or have we?
Well, it's just all
It's
within
an
the
executive
executive
branch,
branch.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I hadn't,
the line item
flipped
for-
over.
So B 145.
I think it's gonna be helpful to do a look back to see that
400.
in past years,
We overspent it is what it looks like.
We did,
It was
and-
a
and I-
reality check.
Oh.
Cause it was
Well, thank
20
you,
grand
Councilwoman
last
Jenny.
year.
I did not flip the
100,
page.
we spent 95.
So we wanna see the historical, breakdown of that as well, Madam Chair. I would like to see it. So
Okay,
we
you
would like to see the,
it.
yeah, we would like to see the historic breakdown.
Councilwoman
Absolutely.
I just
Can
thought it was interesting in the
Councilwoman
context of-
Dotley, may I ask a follow-up
I'm so
question?
sorry, yes, let me, make rounds real fast, so we had Madam, Chair, anybody else had questions about executive branch? Okay, Councilman Clark.
And I guess this is my last follow-up question. And again, this is kind of going to my original questions about how we amend after these discussions. With that level of percentage of change, how open is the administration to providing, like, what would be, like, if you had to come back and say, well, we can cut this to get this down to a level of satisfaction to the council and the budget, like, have you guys thought about what you would amend to maybe lower those percent of change, or?
Well, I would say that our posture at this juncture, as it's part of our proposal, is
Gotcha.
that we feel like things are appropriately sized.
Gotcha.
But I'm hearing what you guys are saying. I'm absolutely gonna go back, take a fresh look, and furnish those budget justifications for you guys, and happy to have a conversation from there.
I'm just testing the temperature
Yeah, yes,
and
sir.
seeing like what the attitude is around it.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Any other questions about the executive branch? All right, next. And it is currently 11:06.
How am I getting hungry just sitting?
Because you know it's almost
My
11:30.
brain is
coming.
working so hard.
It
all of a
is.
sudden. Burning calories.
Alright, so next department is finance administration. Proposed budget is right around $8 million, an increase of $636,000. This budget for finance includes 66 authorized positions. It's an increase of 2 positions. Those 2 positions are transfers over from city planning. They're the 2 capital folks that are gonna move into finance as kind of a reorganization of aligning the capital budget process within finance. And so that's where that's coming from. And then we also had a risk management fee of $83,000 added to the budget this year. But other than that, fairly flat.
That means Javita's doing a wonderful job. So quiet over there, y'all didn't even know he was here. Thank you, Winston.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, so any other questions or anything? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman Henderson.
Thought behind moving all the R&R into finance.
Yeah. Good question.
Centralizing the R&R fund?
Yeah, well, I mean, all the R&R was moved out of the departments and placed into finance.
No, it's an essential cost. It doesn't live in a department, the R&R. that $2 million or?
Well, it's in a line
It's not
item.
itemized by department though. It all is only under one department.
You're saying you see it in the itemized budget?
What is
I
R&R?
think it's on.
Repair, replace.
It's like replacing, chairs.
Okay.
Or maybe I'm reading the line item wrong. I don't know.
Hey, I'm gonna ask all the stupid questions.
And R&R used to be at the departmental level.
Well, I can find it now.
In the break.
Need a clip?
Was it in the, yeah, wait a minute. Here.
It's on your slide.
Yeah, earlier on.
So is what we looking for?
It's right here, so on page B 35 with the cost center, R&R finance, or, we've got the $2 million and then zero for R&R Public Works, R&R Fire, et cetera.
So centrally managed.
I think they put it there and then they kind of manage it, centrally managed, and then they'll spread it out later between the departments. But it's just a way for the finance folks to help manage that, because that budget team meets with the departments and they work through the requests and all the different things that go through there. So it's a way for them to kind of keep track of it as a city as a whole instead of it being managed in each department. But it's not city finance isn't directing the funds to $2 million. It's just put there during the budget process, and then it's spread kind of between the departments.
But it does, I think it lends itself to visibility, to have a holistic picture of what the needs are across the city so that they can help prioritize. So instead of each department having some portion of the $2 million and then,
In their budget.
yeah, just sitting in their budget and they can't, it's not enough to really do something that might need to be done. Well, finance, because they have all of the funding and then they're meeting with the departments regularly, they have the ability to have a sense of what is needed from an R&R perspective across all the departments, and then can help inform a decision that, you know what, we actually can do, making it up, $1 million project, R&R project in this one department, because we know, we have line of sight to what the needs are in the other department, and we don't see that there's a commensurate project in this fiscal year.
All right, any other questions, finance and administration? All right. Moving into human resources.
Human resources proposed budget $3 million, a decrease of $1.2 million, and this is a little skewed. This is related to the risk. Previously, before risk was its own fund, risk management lived within HR. So we've taken all of those risk management functions, the people, the admin costs, all the costs associated with risk management, and pulled them out into a separate fund. So that's the bulk of this decrease within HR. It's just a function of moving risk management out from under their umbrella into a separate fund.
Where does that fund live now?
I'm sorry?
Where does that fund live now?
The risk management fund, it is an internal service fund. It's Fund 6512. It's kind of set up similar to Phil's liability fund for, it's in general government. is
Okay,
the
that
thing.
was my question.
Sure.
I was like, Weston,
Trying to think through that, yeah, general government,
Thank you.
yeah.
All right, any other questions for human resources? All right, moving along to community development.
One second, I'm sorry.
Human resources?
Have we moved those positions out? So they're their own separate department, or?
They're a division.
There, yes.
That is, it's an enterprise fund that, so technically, I mean, I don't wanna get over my skis here, but technically, he is, the leader of that department is the manager of that fund, is the way to think about it. Is that right?
Right, yeah,
And they're no longer in HR?
no longer HR.
They're no longer part of HR.
Where are they at now?
They're their own separate.
Their own separate department? Okay.
Is it a department
not
or
a
a
de-
division?
It's more of a division. It's kind of like, I mean, you think of it functionally as a department, a separate department. But internally, when we have a department, they're all assigned like a code A through Z department. HR is E, or what, now instead of being an E, they're an A, which is just general government. So they live within general government, but functionally, it's a cost center,
Who do they
essentially.
report to?
They report to
To Mandy. Up on the operations side.
So what oversight do they have?
Mandy.
Well, they
They-
have oversight.
they report directly to
So
you.
they have oversight. We have shared, I'm gonna point to the city attorney, because they take claims to him as far as like what we're gonna pay and things like that, and they have a
Okay.
discussion about it. But as far as their performance, that would be me.
Okay, so they're treated like a department, but they're not like department head that needs to be confirmed and all that. They're just kind
At
of like.
this point, no.
Okay, that's
In the future, possibly. I don't want to be misquoted.
okay. Understood.
Any-
Okay, thank you. That's all.
All right, thank you, Councilman Elliott. All right, moving on to community development.
So community development, a proposed budget of right at $11 million, an increase of $887,000. This budget includes 130 authorized positions, which is a net increase of 9. A big part of this is moving the aquatics portion that was in parks and outdoors underneath community development to kind of better align the operations. The pools, most of the pools live in the community centers, so it makes the management of that a little easier whenever the pool folks live in community development. So it's just a realignment of some of these different things to help with that. They also have a risk management fee of $163,000 that was added to their budget this year, and have a slight increase in employment agencies to help with some of the part-time staffing that they need.
All right, any questions about the budget? Councilman Clark.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gottlieb. In reference to the 2 positions that were eliminated, which looks like a decent cost savings for us, what were they centered, like what type of, without telling me the name of the position, what type of positions were they?
Mandy, are you able to speak to that?
And actually Carol Clement, she's here too. So there was so y'all didn't hear about, there was a mini reorg that happened in the department. So we had directors that were over the centers, and those positions were both dissolved. One of those individuals went to the director of operations, and the other one went to a manager of programs. So it's for the CACs. And so this director of assistance programs, I believe, was vacant, the one that was deleted, as well as the admin support assistant too. And we also had another person that was in a specialist position, and we moved them into a community center. So basically, this was a efficiency and a
Gotcha.
nice move.
Okay, all right, Councilman Clark, did you have any other questions?
None for now, thank you.
Okay, Councilman Elliott.
Question. So who does the citizens report to now?
The centers will be reporting to the deputy.
Oh, the deputy. Okay.
Yes.
And I have one other question, if that's okay. I know we're kind of in limbo with our senior program. It's kind of like in Glenwood, and I see we have a line item here for our senior center, but we also have a line item for Glenwood as well. How do we reconcile the difference between like what budgets are used for like senior programming and what is for Glenwood? I think it's just like a nuance thing. I really don't. It's not that big of a deal. I'm just curious.
No, it's fine, yes.
Yeah.
So the Glenwood, well, the senior piece is because we are looking at options to move them out of the Glenwood Center so that we can get that back. So we wanted to make sure that we put in rent and other expenses that would become
Makes sense.
expenses in '26, so we wouldn't have a shortage.
Makes sense. Okay, that's perfect. Okay. That's all.
Council, Gottlieb, I've got a follow-up
Just a
question.
sec, let me just say,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Councilman Elliott,
That's it, Madam Chair. Thank you.
okay, Councilman Clark?
A follow-up question at the senior center. What is the breakout of what those costs will be used for? So, looks like, proposed. What is the proposed amount for the creation of the new senior center for FY26? Like, is it, sorry, my eyes, I'm wearing my glasses. Is it 130,000?
That may be for the rent they're talking about.
That would be for
Somebody help me understand.
operations.
Yeah,
So-
there's a capital bar for that, and it's $500,000.
That's in the capital budget.
Yeah, so it's a separate
Gotcha.
line
That
item.
goes to,
Is that in a previous capital mark, or is that in this current?
That's in this current capital
Okay.
budget. We'll talk about it later, but
and also that goes to my question earlier, like the duplicate. So I'll yield to that because I have questions about senior centers or the senior center and like what that, how that capital project expenditure,
relates.
which I guess is not related to, because this is more so operational.
Correct,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you for the
Right.
education.
Yeah, so this is funding like kind of the day-to-day. We know that that's gonna continue while we're also trying to figure out what is the next iteration
Gotcha.
supposed to be. And that 500 is to help us get to a decision point and start making planning documents so that we can do whatever it is that we decide we're going to do in this fiscal year.
And I'll yield my questions for the senior center in that portion of the itinerary today.
marking it out, and you're gonna come back again.
You want me to do it now?
No, you are fine. We can yield till we get to that.
Yeah, I was
capital
gonna say,
project.
I'd prefer you guys to,
I
yeah.
just know what you do me like Councilman Elliott did me earlier. He came back and said, well, nah.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, that's
I
my
wanna
fault.
make sure I got it before I scratch it out.
I apologize,
Okay,
I'm
you
just
good.
jumping ahead.
No.
Experienced chair.
Yeah, so I got you, so
Thank you.
so for now, you're good with the
Yes,
senior,
ma'am.
the senior, and then we'll
Yes,
come
ma'am.
back once we get into capital. Okay,
Yes,
any
ma'am.
other questions for community development? All right, I think that's it, thank you, Carol. All right, council, just so you know, it's 11:18.
Praise the Lord.
That's all right. That's all right. So, woo.
Praise him.
All right, so we are gonna jump into police here. This is an important one to understand what's going on here, because I don't want to leave the wrong impression. So I wanna remind everybody that last year, we had, for the first time, I think probably ever, we authorized but did not fund 23 sworn positions. The reason that we did that, at the time, made sense, but no longer makes sense for us to do. And none of those positions in FY '25 were filled.
Wow.
So the 23 sworn positions that are removed in this budget are not, they still are not filled. And so the decrease of positions is reflected by taking those, let's call them not real positions, off of the board. And then we're adding 5 positions for a net reduction in the ordinance of 18 a net reduction of 18 positions. But the 18 that are being removed never had bodies in them at any point. And they, for all intents and purposes, they never really existed except for CPD budgeting purposes.
Which speaks to the attrition of those departments, that people are retiring faster than we can get people in. But thank God to Chattanoogans for voting for the amendment.
So then the major decrease that you see is related to OPEB. So OPEB is other post-employment benefits. It's effectively health insurance. This is a legacy or a benefit that is no longer offered by the city, but because it was offered to previous employees, it is now an unfunded liability that the city has to pay down. So it's kind of similar to a pension in that way, like we just owe it. And so the rates associated with OPEB, they vary from year to year. Actuaries set the rate. And so this year's OPEB budget came in lower than last year, to the tune of, after you do all of the changes, right, the marginal changes for the CPD's budget, the net reduction is primarily driven by a lower OPEB cost than what was anticipated, which is why we are, less $2 million relative to enacted FY '25. But this budget does accomplish some good things. We're adding 5 positions. 3 of them are crime investigators. We're adding additional capacity with our crisis co-response unit, and we are adding a victim service specialist to continue building out those essential functionalities at CPD.
All right, any questions? Councilman Elliott?
Just OPEB, can you explain what that is a little bit more?
I think that I've exhausted my knowledge of it, so I will let Mandy.
Is it something with benefits?
Back in the day, organizations provided free healthcare for life if you were a city employee. They also provided discounted rates. So this, I'm not talking about the city in general, I'm talking about in general these benefits. And so what this ended up being is that in perpetuity they had to pay for it, but they didn't fund it. So they didn't set aside a separate fund to fund it. So it became this unfunded liability. And about 10 years ago, the nationwide auditors went around and said, and Weston can speak to this because he was one of those auditors, hey, organizations, you have this huge chunk of unfunded liability and you don't have any money to pay for it. So they forced organizations, which was the right thing to do, to set up these funds to start being able to pay for these accounts and these people who are going into these spaces of retiring and continuing to collect off their health insurance premiums. Some organizations, it wasn't just health insurance. Sometimes it was a prescription plan, sometimes it was a dental plan, sometimes it was life insurance. There's all sorts of things that they did in perpetuity. So as times changed and healthcare became more expensive, we cut that back and said employees pay a portion and then employees pay a larger portion, and that's kind of the history of where these other post-employee benefits came from.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That must have been nice.
How many more years do we anticipate we're gonna have it?
I don't have that information, but I can check with Cheryl to find out.
It's the OPEB. So it's every year. It's kind of like our pension, right? So as people retire, the actuaries come in and they say, well, based on the retirees, here's how long we think folks will live, all this stuff.
How many
Right.
people are still alive using this?
It's,
I'll
I
get
will look at total participants, but yeah, it's a
There's
big number.
There's a fancy word for that. They've aged out or.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
And how many participants are still left?
So it's many, many years.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah, it's
still
kinda like-
open, right?
Yeah, it's.
And he's old enough.
Fairly low, so you would have this 20 to 30 years, sometimes past then, so, but we do, every year you see a drop, and that's why you see those rates change, because fewer liabilities.
Oh, all right, Madam, any other questions? Madam Chair Hill, I got you down. And any other questions for police? All right, moving on to fire, 6 minutes.
So, jumping over to fire, again, the primary driver of the reduction you see is also OPEB here, so same situation. There is a net reduction of 18 positions in the fire department, but again, this is a situation where those are not 18 firefighters. Those are 18 vacant positions that we have been carrying over for the future Black Creek Fire Station, which is still a priority, still something that is gonna be needed in that community, and still something for which, once we have a roadmap for building out that fire station, we are gonna have to staff it, right, in future years. But in the interest, again, of having budgets that reflect reality, we wanted to stop carrying those empty positions over year to year.
Okay, any question? Of course, yep. Councilman Henderson?
I'm gonna group fire and police both in together, but besides the OPEB reduction, there's still about $350,000 reduction to the fire and police budget. Why reduction to fire and police? And we're seeing increases
Yeah.
of more than the 3% in other departments.
Yeah, so it's a function of math. Do you wanna explain on the police
On
side?
the police side, yeah. So, as you said, it's a combination of a couple different things. So the OPEB being the largest bit of it, there's also some vacancy savings just because of the timing of the classes and some different things where we'll have some vacancies there. We also had
Whoa, wait a minute, you're gonna have vacancies, but those positions still need to be funded, correct?
People retired.
No, we have vacancies for positions that are authorized and funded. The only
Right.
positions that we eliminated were those unfunded fake sworn positions.
But an unfunded position would not show up in a $350,000 reduction. correct?
No, but funded positions that were vacant for longer than so longer in the year operationally would reflect a reduction.
So we've eliminated some funded positions?
No.
That were not filled? No?
No, how to explain this? So if you pass or if you share the cost across each month of an operating year of a funded position, and then you fill that position for some portion of the year, then you are going to recognize a reduction of the budget because of that month's funding not being utilized. Help me out here, Weston.
Yeah. And
It's, okay.
Let's track it something else.
To me, the fire department and police department are losing money.
no, so part of it though.
I know,
Chief,
but
Chief,
that isn't the
could you jump
case.
in?
But-
Can you help us at
That
all?
isn't the case.
That is not the
And
case.
part of it is related to risk as well, where a lot of departments saw an increase in their risk costs because, say, finance doesn't have a whole lot of on-job injury costs. We don't, paper cuts, right? But we're getting charged a per-person fee to cover risk, on-job injury, insurance, things like that. Police and fire see a higher percentage of those on-job injuries, where now instead of having the direct costs, they're just paying per head count as well. So they've seen an overall reduction of risk-related costs in their budget, where before they would budget $1 million for OJI, they're only budgeting $500,000 now for risk,
So
which
the
includes
reduction is coming in the risk.
part. They have a good sizable reduction in risk because we spread those costs across the general fund essentially. So the departments who typically would have higher fire, police, public works, have higher on-job injury or other risk-related costs. Those have now been spread to purchasing and finance and city council and other folks. It's been spread citywide on a per person basis. So they've seen a sizable decrease in their risk-related costs in the budget.
So let me say, like, there is no reduction in operational funding for either police or the
Is
fire
there an
department.
But there's not an increase in operational.
Well, we're actually, in police, we are increasing by 5 positions relative to last year. So we are. The reason that there's a delta is because there are variable costs that came in lower than previously budgeted. So in fiscal year 2026, previously budgeted variable costs are less than what they were in FY '25. So we're showing a budget reduction to reflect those variable cost decreases in FY '26, while at the same time, and for police, we are adding new positions. It just works out, the arithmetic just works out such that there is a net reduction, but it isn't an operational reduction at all. It's a variable cost reduction.
So you're saying they've got more money to work with this year than they had last year? Is that a correct statement?
No, I wouldn't say it like that, which is why I didn't. I would say that they have more positions. They will be able to do more this year, and they're actually gonna be able to do it with $2 million less appropriated relative to FY '25.
Right. Chairman Henderson, would you like them to send that in a formal email? I would like it in a formal email.
Oh.
That was a whole lot of information. You got it?
I don't
Okay.
even know what they-
Okay,
what it was-
yeah. We're like, okay, the numbers say, and it's a reason why we're not accountants and things.
Well, that was about 6'4" and you're only 6'2".
Right, exactly. I'm just like,
Okay.
We will line item that out.
Okay.
It is wacky, but fundamentally, there are variable costs that are non-operational, meaning the dollars have to be paid every year at some level, and in many cases, we don't control what that level is. We're just told by some exogenous thing, be it OPEB or risk or whatever, like, and it's gonna vary year to year. When you add all of that up, take that total, set it aside, then you add up, so that's savings, right? If it comes in less year over year, then that's savings, so put the savings over here. And then all of the operational things that we're adding, and then you just subtract them and you get that reduction because of the way that the math ferrets out.
Okay.
But we can show that, we'll show that equation.
So we have more info on that, a summer with some graphs.
Yep.
Will be perfect. Okay, then any other questions for fire?
I kind of have a question, but I don't want to. I'm like hungry, tired. I need a
Lunch
research.
just got here, like I just
Like,
saw them walk
but I
by.
want to.
It did, like
Good
literally.
eye, good eye.
Okay,
I guess-
so let's try to go ahead and get fire out the way before we go to lunch.
Yeah, because Councilwoman Marvin just gave me that finger.
I know.
And I know that finger.
Yes. Okay,
Mama would
so
give me that finger.
Weston and Kevin, did y'all finish this fire part?
We did, so
Okay,
if there are any
Chief, you got anything
questions.
to say, except we need to give you what you want.
Exactly.
I'm with you. That's right. That's right.
That's what I'm here for.
That's right. That's right. I love fire play.
Okay, so
Okay, so it is 11:32. We will break until 12 to 12 o'clock. And it's only 30 minutes, because that's all we need, but we just need to refresh. So 12, and then we will circle back here at 12 o'clock. So go and get your breathe, a little walk, a little snack, and we'll be back. Woo.